Good morning to you all. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm Sir Tailor. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself shortly during the course of my presentation. I'm going to now share my screen and, you can lower your hands if you wish. I'm going to share my screen to go back to the PowerPoint presentation, which I'll be using throughout. And I'll be using this PowerPoint presentation. I'll be telling a few anecdotes. I'll be sharing some videos, which are all from YouTube, so they're publicly available to you. During the presentation, if you wish to record any of it or you want to take screenshots, you're most welcome to do that. What I'm sharing is essentially public knowledge, and I'm very happy to share it, and I'm very happy for you to share it with others too, if you think it's worth sharing. Now, this presentation is one that I give more or less monthly. I've been doing it for the past year or so. And it's attended by people from various locations. I made a note of the people who registered for today, and we've got quite a few from London, Slough, Langley area, which we normally do have, but we also have a few from further afield, such as Leeds, Ilford, Sheffield, and Leicester today. We also, as usual, have a few people from West Middlesex, that is Hounslow, Isleworth, Southall, Feltham, and some from Surrey, Epsom, Woking, and Wokingham I saw in the list of attendees. You're all very welcome. The things I'm going to share with you are fairly universal. I think they'll apply. It doesn't matter where in the country you live. I also saw on the list of attendees that there were some familiar names, people who I think have a child already on one of my programs. Thank you very much for coming. I hope you will find it worth your while. The presentation, I'm sharing the same, what I like to call wisdom, as I do almost every month. And some of you have attended before, but I hope that you'll still find it worth your while. In any case, the Q&A, which follows immediately after the presentation, is unique each time. And it's, for me, the most interesting part, because each time I get some unique perspective or a question that I haven't quite anticipated or addressed before. So even if you've seen the whole presentation more than once before, you might still find the Q&A to be valuable. Speaking of the Q&A, I intend to present for about 2 hours, plus or minus a bit. And then Q&A, I allow about an hour after. Sometimes it goes over depending on questions. I do try to address all questions arising. Now, I am recording this event. It is a public event, and it may end up on YouTube. So be aware of that. When you ask your questions, if something very personal or private to you, don't discuss it in this forum. I'll mention that again towards the end. I'll also mention that I'm an expert, most people would say, in 11+ preparation, not in other aspects. So if you're interested in particular grammar schools or admissions policies and what have you, I am not the expert. In fact, I would argue that nobody's actually the expert in that, because those are changing and they change annually. But I'll assist you with anything I possibly can. Let's begin with why you're here. I know there'll be a variety of reasons, but I do think that you being here says something about you. And I hope it is that you want to do your best for your children. And perhaps that's why you're here, and you're hoping that you learn something here today that will help you to be better informed so you can do better for your children. And I'm going to do my best to help you. If you're not here for that reason, or if that's not one of your reasons or drivers for being here, then you are in the wrong place and you should leave now. Now, I know another reason why many of you are here is because I specifically advertised it as 3 crucial things that some parents get right. And I won't disappoint you. I will address 3 specific things. And in fact, I'm addressing them all through the presentation, but right at the end or near the end, I will actually specify the 3 points that I had in mind. And of course, you know, some people seem to just get it right, and we don't know quite how or what exactly they're doing, but we would like to learn from their example. Some people seem to get some things right, and why not? Well, who wouldn't want to learn from the example of somebody who is getting it right? So I'll share those right towards the end. Now, which comes to why I am here. I mean, that was why you're here. Why am I here? Well, I have some expertise and insights which I think can help you to make good choices for yourselves and for your children. Some of you might be thinking, oh, but what's in it for me? That is for Sir Tailor. What's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me is that I feel like when my daughters, I have two daughters, I'll mention them again, were going through 11 plus, I wish I'd known then, or even when they were younger, actually, things that I now know because of the work that I do. And I'm thinking, you know what, I could have probably done a little better and made better choices for them and myself with a little greater wisdom. And I'm just trying to share that with you, some insights, some expertise. So I'm saying, I'm not necessarily going to say what you like. I don't know, you might like some of it. I hope you like all of it. But there's a fair chance that some of you, the things I say, you may not like. But I'm saying stick with it and give yourself a chance. I'm going to share some important insights. The things that you don't particularly like or agree with, they might sting a little at first. But I ask you to reflect, and then your children might reap the reward. So give it a little bit of time to sink in, reflect on it. And if you do, you might have the opportunity to make more informed decisions and choices. Now, first thing I have to do is play this video clip. As I mentioned, all the clips are from YouTube. This is a short one to begin.
It's also important to remember that you are not your feelings. One of the most important things that you can learn from this book, and more importantly for life, is that you are not your feelings. Your feelings are there to give you an example of how you could react, but that doesn't mean you have to act in that way. So remember, you do not have to act on your feelings. When you understand that your feelings are just suggestions for how you could act in a situation and not what you have to do, you will become unstoppable.
Okay, so you are not your feelings. Now, what I'm really saying is it's not necessary to react with your emotions to things. And actually, that's a really pertinent thing when it comes to raising children and teaching children, because one of the most important lessons that we can teach our children is that they are not their feelings, and they don't have to react with their feeling. The feeling, if you like, is information, input to the mind, and then your mind can evaluate what is the best way to respond to a particular situation. So you're not your feelings. Okay, now I mentioned you might or might not like some of the things I say, but I'm suggesting that maybe just give me a chance and maybe heed me, even if you don't like what I say. It's partly to do with where I'm coming from, my motivation. I'm motivated to educate, not by profit. If I wished to prioritize profit, it would be very easy for somebody with my expertise to do. I've been doing essentially nothing but preparing children for 11 plus for the last 20 years. That's 20 years in April. And I could very easily have groups of more than a dozen children, but I choose not to. I choose to keep the groups down to single figures, which is really not good for profit. And it's really great for teaching. And because I'm not actually trying to get into your pockets, and I'm not trying to rob you of anything, I can actually tell you the things you need to know so you can make better choices. So you do need to know a little about me if you want to really understand where I'm coming from. My name is actually Sudhir. My surname is actually Tailor. And I decided it was a really cool thing to call myself Sir Tailor because I thought it just sounded good. And I'm a teacher. I was born in Kenya. And when I was very young, my family moved to India, and I immigrated to this country from India when I was 7 years old. I am dad to 2 girls. I always feel compelled to prove that, and there they are. Kavita on the left is 23 and she's at York University, and Nilam is 26 and she is a journalist currently working for the Guardian. I've been in the teaching profession, teaching and training, I should say more accurately, since 1985. And since that time, I spent 10 years in the Royal Navy doing training of sailors and officers. I've been teaching my own 11 plus course since 2001, in fact, April, so 20 years this April. I estimate I've personally taught between 10,000 and 20,000 people over 35 years. And not least, I try to do my bit to make the world a better place for all of us and our children. I don't have any delusions of grandeur. I know that, whatever I can do is a tiny little pinprick, but, it's better than nothing. So I'm not driven by profit, then what? I have a vision. I'm going to share that with you. It's to empower people like you, by enhancing their love of and skills in learning and reasoning. I believe in the power of education to improve the world and people's lives. So education, we tend to normally think of children's education, but our education as parents is actually really critical to our children's education. And that's why I do this 11 plus education for parents once a month. So are you serious about doing your best for your child? That's a rhetorical question. I know that you are. By the very fact that you're here, you are serious. You're giving up your Sunday morning and a little bit of your Sunday afternoon, I hope, to listen to me. And that tells me you are serious. But I'd like to put up a quote from Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan was a scientist. He was world renowned for being an authority on the search for extraterrestrial life. And because of that, his opinion was frequently sought about, is there life in other worlds or not? And he was asked by a reporter, come on, Carl, is there life out there or not? Because they're looking for a headline. And he gave the scientist's answer, the thinking man's answer, which is that we don't know because the evidence is not in. We can't say one way or the other. And of course, that's not a very catchy headline. So she pressed him to commit one way or the other. And he said, or she said to him, but what does your gut tell you? And this was his answer. But I try not to think with my gut. If I'm serious about understanding the world, thinking with anything besides my brain, as tempting as that might be, is likely to get me into trouble. So typically good-humored and thoughtful reply. So I'm saying, yes, you are serious by virtue of the fact that you're here. I know that. But then you have to be thinking with your brain and not your gut. Learning. Well, we're all here to learn, parents as well as children, and it requires mental work. What is learning? Learning consists of thinking new thoughts and creating new pathways in the brain. This will be mentioned in one of the videos. And some new thoughts can be in conflict with some old thoughts. And I think that in that case, reflect logically about which thoughts are better, which ones make more sense. Right. Now I'm going to show you that my presentation is in 4 parts and in this order, and they're in order of importance, starting with the by far the most important part, which is mind management, and then mindset. Now, the size of the font and how high up it is on the screen is my way of indicating to you the importance of it. So the higher up and the larger the font, the more important this is. Then perspective, and then 11 plus stuff. That's the order and that's the importance. Let's begin with mind management. Effective mind management, yours and your child's, is critical to your child's flourishing. So notice that not just your child's mind management, but your mind management is critical to your child's flourishing. Okay, now we're going to have a little bit of audience participation. I've got these questions and they're really for you to think about. Question 1, what are some of the things that you do that you know you should not do? Okay, now I'm not going to ask anybody to declare this or even speak it out or write it or anything or share it. So this is completely private. Just think of some of the things that you do that you know you should do. They can be trivial, they can be quite important, big things, but it's private. So just think of something for yourself, just to humor me. I'll give a couple of trivial examples about myself. I sometimes overeat. I sometimes eat a good bit of chocolate, just occasionally, not often. I sometimes use my phone when I'm driving, not that I'm driving much these days. I don't think many of us are driving a lot anyway these days. So those are some examples. Another one, which is very topical, is that sometimes when I go into a shop, I get within 2 meters of another shopper. Okay, so these are some things. You can think of your own things, big or small. And then, are there things that you avoid doing that you know you should do? Well, in my case, exercise comes to mind. I haven't been exercising anywhere near as much as I hoped to or intended to or should do. So that's something I've been kind of avoiding during big parts of lockdown. So you've thought of something. Okay, now just raise your hand if you have thought of something. I'm going to lower all hands because a few were up from the beginning. Okay, now raise your hand if you've thought of something that you do that you know you should not, or something you avoid doing, you know you should do. Oh, only a few hands are up. Now, come on, the rest of you, I need you to be thinking of something because you'll get more from it. I'm making a point, that's why I'm asking. Okay, so some of you, a good number of you have thought of something like that. Okay. Now, next question is slightly trickier. It's easy to think of something, I'm lowering all hands, but can you think of why it is that you sometimes don't do what you know is the sensible thing to do? In other words, that you're not doing what you think you should, or you're avoiding, or you're doing something you know you should not do. In other words, you're not doing what you think is sensible, what you think is right. Why is that? Why is it that sometimes you choose the thing that you know is not the sensible thing? Because, you know, logically, it doesn't seem to make any sense. So that's a slightly trickier question. Well, let's have a think about that. So if you know something is right, something is sensible, and you find yourself doing something else, then it's like you're being sabotaged because you're not acting in accordance with your best judgment. So that raises the next question: who's your biggest enemy? Well, it's very easy to point at yourself and say, oh, it's me, I'm doing it to myself. Because nobody is forcing me to eat that cake or to sit on the couch when I could be doing some exercise or whatever it is. Who is the biggest enemy? Well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that it isn't you. So if you thought it was you, you are your own biggest enemy, you're wrong. It isn't you. It's your chimp. It's your chimp that when you know what is the right thing to do or what is the better thing to do, and you find yourself doing something else, it's not you that's sabotaging you, it's your chimp. Okay, so there's the good news. So you can feel a bit better about yourself. But the bad news is, well, who's your chimp? If you're not aware of your chimp, you're in trouble. Okay, so let's look at who is this chimp. Well, your chimp lives in your head, but is not you. I'm going to play another one of these YouTube video clips, which gives you a nice introduction to the chimp.
There are 3 core tenets to the book. You have a chimp and a human in your head, and they want very distinct things. Your human is a simplified representation of your prefrontal cortex and some other parts of your brain that handle long-term thinking, delayed gratification, emotion control, consideration, and ethics. You also have a chimp in your brain. This is the limbic system and all the older parts of your brain, the parts of your brain that we would have had more in common with a chimp. Steve Peters separates out these parts of the brain and says that they want completely distinct things. They have entirely different motivations. And if you don't understand this and fail to put them in their appropriate places, then you will be forever in conflict within your own mind. This book is extremely simple. It has no flowery words or high concept ideas. It's plain and simple, to the point. You've got two dudes in your head, a chimp and a human. They are in conflict. You need to sort out that conflict if you want to have a happy, healthy, long life. And there is great, great power in this simplicity. Anytime you find yourself being overly emotional, reactive, sad, scared, you have to realize that your chimp is acting up. Anytime you feel hurt or jealous, it is the chimp that is in control. Realize that you are not your chimp. The chimp is like a child that you must always look after and that will never grow up. It will always remain the chimp, and you must accept it as it is. Don't control and hate the chimp. Manage and love the chimp. This requires you to listen and give it what it needs. So if the chimp is frightened, you don't just go, shut up, or ignore it, or berate it, or anything like that. You don't ignore your emotions. You don't ignore what your body is telling you. Instead, you listen, and then you find the most logical, rational solution to the problem. You must be a problem solver. And if you don't find solutions that appease the chimp and make the human happy, you will be forever miserable. If you don't make the chimp happy, if you ignore it or try to trick it, then it will take over. Your chimp needs sex, it needs a tribe, it needs love and security, and it needs territory. And you have to give it these things, amongst other things, to avoid internal conflict. You must satisfy its needs, keeping check on it like you would with a small, scared child. If you do this, then it will behave. By separating out the parts of your brain and giving them identities, it allows you to distance yourself from the more base, reactive parts of your mind, and thereby love yourself more. Where once you might say, why the hell do I always get so angry over such small, silly things? I'm such a goddamn loser. You now say, why does this get your back up? And how can we make sure this happens less in the future? What do you need, Jim? I mean, you might or might not say it in a weird, fake American accent. This acceptance of all aspects of yourself is pure liberation. The vast majority of people are completely ruled by their chimps, and they don't even realize it. This makes them act in an angry, petty, possessive, egotistical way. If you keep an awareness of this, then when people act out, it allows you to have more compassion, empathy, and patience with them. You can say, hang on a second, this person is clearly ruled by their chimp. Sure, they may be doing me wrong, but far better to have some slight I can bounce back from in 3 seconds than to have an unruly chimp who is on the clock 24/7, causing mayhem and terror and destroying one's life.
So at the bottom, I've put that. If you're unfamiliar with your chimp, it's probably making important decisions for you and your family, and that's not a good idea. Okay, so how can you tell who's in charge at any particular moment? You versus your chimp. By the way, the book that the narrator in that video referred to is called The Chimp Paradox, which I'm holding up to the camera now, by Professor Steve Peters, and we'll come back to that. So, who's in charge? You or your chimps? Very easy to tell. We like to think it's us with our nobler, higher motives, and not the chimp, which is like a child, emotionally driven. Well, how can you recognize when your chimp is in charge? I've kind of made it easy. You can take a screenshot if you like. The left part, green, is good, and the right part, red, is not so good. So left is human, right is chimp. The way you would make good decisions, we're here about 11 plus, and I'm an expert in preparing children for that. So let's imagine we're talking about whether to put your child for 11 plus, and if so, how do you prepare your child? Those are important decisions if 11 plus is on the horizon. Good ways. Why is this important? What are the facts? And nowadays, there are so many facts, overwhelmingly large amount of facts on anything. Then you ask, well, which facts matter the most? Because they don't all matter equally. And then you weigh up and decide which decision makes the best logical sense. This is the human way of making decisions. And on the right are some of the way that chimp makes decisions. So if you sense these ways of making decisions going on in yourself or another person, you know that that's the chimp in charge. What are others doing? How will it make me look? What will people think? What do my urges say, or my gut, or my instinct? Okay, now think of goals. Think of 1 or 2 goals that you have. Personal goals, again, they're not for sharing, they're private, completely private. So just have a goal or 2 in your head. I've got a goal in my head. I'm not going to share it, but have a goal in your own head, please, and raise your hand when you've thought of something. Can be small, can be large, it doesn't matter. It's personal to you and it's completely private. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so you've got a goal in mind. Okay, something you wish to strive to achieve. Thank you. That's most of you did. Thank you very much. So keep that goal in your head. And now let's, I'm going to lower all hands. Let's look at goals and success. Now, I don't know what any of you was thinking. I'm not going to ask you either, but some people do say to me, some parents, getting their child into a grammar school is their goal, or getting their child into a particular grammar school is their goal. And surely, you know, getting your child into a grammar school seems like a sensible goal. Getting your child into a particular grammar school is surely success, especially if you've got an older child going to a particular grammar school and their younger brother or sister, you want them to follow on and go to the same school because, well, it would be so much simpler. So those seem like sensible goals, but they're not. Well, how come? Wrong on both counts. It isn't. You'd expect perhaps me to say something different, being a tutor for 11 plus, but no, those are not sensible goals. At this, your chimp feels indignant and says, oh, how dare you, who do you think you are? Whereas your human, you know, thinks, oh, I wonder why he's saying that. Okay, so there's a difference between a chimp and a human. Right, let me tell you about Rosie. Rosie was one of my first pupils. You know, I mentioned it a couple of times already. April this year, I will have been doing 11 plus as my full-time profession for 20 years. And Rosie was a pupil in my first year, so going back to 2001. I taught her, and I used to teach small groups of children in Langley Pavilion in Langley on a Sunday. And she was in that group. And she used to attend with a friend. They were family friends. Now, sometime after they had sat the 11 plus, which used to take place middle of November at that time, I was shopping. I used to live in Slough, and I was shopping in, I think it used to be the Co-op. And as I was going around doing my weekly shop on the weekend, I saw Rosie and her family. And when they saw me, they came up to me, and they obviously were very happy. And the reason they were eager to tell me is because Rosie had passed the 11 plus and that they believed she would be going on to grammar school. And they expressed their gratitude to me for that. And they were obviously jubilant, which was really nice for me to feel like, yes, this child had succeeded in a way that was important to the family. And this is what we all want. And then I carried on shopping, and I saw Rosie's friend and her family. And from a distance, it looked to me like there had been a death in the family, because their father, they were walking slowly. The father seemed to have his head down, and his complexion looked gray to me. So I went up to them and I said, oh, how are you? Is there something wrong? And they said, well, the daughter didn't pass the 11 plus. And I could scarcely believe that that was the reason why they were behaving as if there had been a death in the family. And I thought, at that moment, I thought, what a ridiculous reaction to a score in a test. How ridiculous to be doing that to your child, to let your child feel as if they've somehow let the family down and there's been some great tragedy. And I resolved at that moment that I had to do something about that attitude that many people had at that time, and some people still have. And That's why I do this presentation, or that's part of the reason why I do this presentation, and try and give parents a slightly healthier perspective on it so that their children are protected from that kind of attitude, which is extremely damaging. And it's not just damaging that day or that week or that month, but it does stay with children for a lifetime. I know people, and you might also know people who took their 11 plus, who are now middle-aged or older, but who took their 11 plus when they were 10 or 11, and they didn't pass it, and they're still stigmatized by it. Not by anybody else necessarily, but in their own minds. It really affects them for their lifetime. And in my view, that is the worst thing about 11 plus. So if that's not success, what is success? Well, it depends how you think of it. A wise man said, your health is your real wealth. So if you stay in good health, maybe that's success. This is something very pertinent now. I think, over the past year, since COVID really struck, we've come to appreciate that aspect of life more, whereas previously, I think a lot of people did take it for granted. Or is it happiness? And I think there's a lot of truth in this observation that two things prevent us from happiness: living in the past and observing others. Well, let's have a look at this video about success.
The book is also great because it
goals.
talks about how to set effective goals. Because a lot of the times, if you set a goal and don't reach it, you'll feel disappointed with yourself. There's a way you can avoid this disappointment, and that's by setting a goal that isn't controlled by external factors. For example, you could set a goal of getting a job, but there's no guarantee you're going to get it. However, what if you change your goals to reading up on the job, learning interview techniques, and how to act with power? If you don't get the job, you can still be happy because you've achieved your goals and maximize your chance of getting.
Okay, now obviously this video isn't specific to 11 plus. It's not really specific to anything. It can be applied to 11 plus. What the narrator is saying is that setting a goal of getting a particular job is not a good goal. It's not a sensible goal. And the reason why it's not a sensible goal is because it isn't in your control whether you achieve it or not. Now, some of you may be thinking, oh yes, but it is in your control whether you get the job or not. Well, I disagree, and I'm going to explain briefly why I disagree. You are in control of how good your CV looks. You are, to some degree, in control of what job you select and how well suited you are to that job, and how well your past experience, your qualifications suit you for that job. You are in control of how you present yourself, how you dress, your manners, and your interview technique. Yes, those things are in your control, and they are sensible goals. But getting the job is not in your control. You could, on paper, be the best candidate for the job. That's not a guarantee of getting the job. You could have the best presentation in an interview, and that's not a guarantee you're going to get the job. Why? The reason is because the decision about who gets the job is made by human beings, normally more than one, a panel of them. And being human beings, it means that their decision isn't entirely objective or, a tick box exercise. So you may tick the boxes, but a person on the interview panel may have just got a sense that no, there's something about you that they just couldn't quite put their finger on, but they didn't think you were quite right for the job. They themselves can't put their finger on why, and you have no idea why. And they themselves, for example, you may have on a subconscious level reminded them of another person without them even realizing it. This is just one example, and I don't think it's far-fetched at all, of a million things you yourself could think of why you may not get the job for which on paper it looked like you were the ideal candidate. So if you think you're in control of getting a particular job, then I think you're mistaken. You're not. So sensible goals would be preparing for the interview, preparing a very good CV, selecting a job that really fits your experience and your qualifications and so on. Those are good things to do. Those are effective goals. Now let's translate that into 11 plus preparation. Passing the 11 plus or getting into a particular grammar school are not sensible goals. Why? Because passing 11 plus depends on the child's performance on the day of the 11 plus test. Now, it doesn't matter how clever the child is or how much knowledge they have or how skillful they are, unless they perform to their capabilities or close to their capabilities on the day of the exam, they're not necessarily going to get a score which reflects their capabilities. And the performance on the day, you might think, oh, but I'll train them, coach them, mocks, and then we are controlling it. Wrong. I'll give you a couple of reasons why that's mistaken. Because 2 of a million things that you cannot anticipate or do something about. I'm going to give you 2 examples. One, for myself. Sometimes when I'm sort of maybe about to get a little bit ill and I have no other symptoms, no temperature, no runny nose, no itchy eyes, no sneezing, none of that. The first symptom that, oh, I'm not necessarily at my best is when I can't remember my times tables. Now you have to remember what I do for a living. I'm teaching children for 11 plus. So of course, my mental arithmetic has to be very sharp and my times tables are at my fingertips. So when I can't remember my times tables or struggle to remember some of them, I know something's wrong. And that often is the very first sign that I'm getting a little bit of a cold or a sniffle. And sometimes it does happen, or sometimes it doesn't. But can you imagine that how much that would affect my ability to perform in a test? And there was no warning of it, and there was no other sign of it. Now, it may be that your child is on the verge of getting something, and that is going to drastically affect their ability to perform to their capabilities on the day of the exam. And they won't know, and you won't know, and nobody will know until you open the letter on results day. And then you see and you think, well, what happened there? What went wrong? You just can't anticipate that nor do anything about it. Sometimes, you know, we sleep very soundly, and other times for no reason that we can account for, we don't sleep very soundly. And I think we all understand that if we haven't had a good night's sleep, we can't quite function normally the following day. And you can do some things about it, but you can't in the end control the quality of the sleep that you get the night before the test, that or your child gets before the night before they sit the 11 plus test. Those are 2. I did say 2, but there's a third. I must mention this one. This is about Nikhil. He was one of my pupils in about 2002. He was a very capable boy, and I remember he aspired to do medicine, and he probably did. But he was very capable. He was one of the top pupils, if not the top pupil in his primary school, and he pretty much took my 11 plus course in his stride, and he did well throughout. So he was a very strong candidate. And then when he did his 11 plus, I was very surprised to see that he got 110. At the time, 111 was the pass mark. This was for the Slough grammar schools, and it still is the pass mark. But he missed it by 1 mark, which I was very surprised about, because children who were not as academic as him had passed with much higher scores. So I came to discover later on why it was that he hadn't quite made it, because his mom told me that in trying to motivate him to do his best on the day of the exam, on the way to the exam room, she had said to him, look, son, you do your best in the exam, and afterwards we're going to take you to Thorpe Park. And she had the best of intentions. She was trying to motivate him to do his best, but it backfired because, you know, being a 10-year-old boy, he was totally excited about the prospect of going to Thorpe Park. And throughout the exam, that's what was on his mind. So he wasn't fully focused on the questions in front of him. And I think it's quite remarkable that he still got 110. In the end, she appealed and he was successful. And I think that he did go to grammar school. So, you know, sometimes we as parents, we're trying to do the right thing, the best thing for our child. And sometimes we succeed, and sometimes we actually undermine our children in trying to. So my point is straightforward. You are not in control, and neither is your child in control of how they perform on the day of the exam. Even I'm not in control, and this has been my profession for the last 20 years. So what are you in control of? Well, it's not you so much, but your child. They're in control of what they learn, how much effort they put in to their studies, doing the right things in the right way at the right time. So the choices they make about where they put their energies, their efforts, that they're in control of. So that is what is a sensible goal for your child to do their best, to make their best effort. And for you to make your best effort in supporting your child. And I to make my best effort in supporting you and your child. Hence, I'm here. So these are sensible goals. That's about sensible goals. So how do you measure success then? Well, this is Professor Steve Peters, the author of the Chimp Paradox and the inventor of this mind model. And I didn't say so, I think, but this Chimp Paradox, this idea of the human and the chimp living inside your body, that's his model. And it is a model, but it's a very useful and powerful model. It's such a useful and powerful model, in my experience and opinion, that I issued his book, The Chimp Paradox, to the parents of all children who are on the 11+ program, because I think it's a real education for parents, a really valuable, very practical thing. So according to him, measure success in life by effort and doing your best. Then it's in your hands to succeed and be proud of yourself. I think you'll already know that when you're relying on other people to do things, or things to fall into place which are out of your control, and you're measuring your own success or setting your own goals, and you're relying on external factors to fall into place, that is very, very stressful and not a recipe for contentment. Okay, now we come to the second section. So that was all about mind management. Now we come on to mindset. Here's a YouTube video on this topic, which will help you to understand that your mindset can help or hinder you in striving towards your potential, and your child in striving towards their potential. This is your mindset. Just like your mind management is deeply affecting your child, so is your mindset.
Do you have a growth mindset? How do you think of intelligence? Do you think you're born with a certain level of intelligence that you can't change much? Or do you think it's something you can work on to develop and grow? Many students think that their level of intelligence is fixed, that they can't do much to change it. This can lead them to feeling that they just aren't smart enough to succeed, especially when courses get more challenging. But what if you knew that no matter who you are, through effort and effective strategies, you can develop your level of intelligence? According to Stanford University psychologist Carol Dweck, how we think about our brains actually affects how well we learn. Dweck says that people generally think with one of two different mindsets, a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe that their intelligence is fixed at birth and they can't do much to change it. People with a growth mindset believe that their talents, abilities, and intelligence can be developed in different ways. And you may feel like you have a fixed mindset in some ways and a growth mindset in others. For example, you may think with a fixed mindset that you're just not a math person, but you may adopt a growth mindset with writing, music, sports, or another discipline. In fact, scientists who study the brain have found that the brain is like a muscle. It changes and grows in response to what we do. The harder we work using helpful strategies and the more challenges we face, the stronger and smarter the brain becomes. This is because the brain is made up of cells called neurons, which are connected to each other. As we learn, the number of connections between our neurons also grows. As we continue to exercise our brains, the connections between our neurons grow as well. These new and stronger connections help to make us smarter. Scientists call this concept neuroplasticity. Research shows that students who adopt a growth mindset, who believe that their brains can grow and develop through effort and challenges, actually do better in school. For these students, the goal is not to prove what they already know, but rather to learn and grow. Students with a growth mindset view challenges and mistakes not as proof that they aren't smart enough, but as opportunities to become smarter. The good news is that you can develop a growth mindset. You've taken the first step by learning about some of the science that shows you can grow your brain. The next step is to consider your mindset. If you have some areas in which you think you aren't smart, challenge yourself to learn and grow. Why should you bother? Because if you learn to develop your mindset, you'll persist longer with problems. You'll take on harder challenges and stretch your mental muscle more. You won't be as affected by setbacks, and in the end, you'll learn more. And the effects of changing your mindset can stick with you for years, since you're training your brain to think in a new way.
So that's a very nice introduction to the growth mindset. Now this next video about praise, it blew me away the first time I saw it a couple of years ago. Don't blink.
So check this out. Carol Dweck and her colleagues wanted to look into the impacts that praise had on children's development. So what they did is they took over 400 fifth grade students from all across the nation, and they did a really simple yet interesting study. Here's how it went down. They gave all the kids a really, really easy nonverbal IQ test. There were 10 questions, and at the end of the test, they praised all the children in one of two ways. The first group was praised for their intelligence. So they said, wow, great job. You must be really smart at this. Now the second group was praised for their effort. So they said, wow, great job. You must have worked really, really hard at this. Now this is a really subtle difference, but the impact it had is incredible. So after praising the kids and getting them divided up into the two groups, they gave them all an option for their next test. The first option was, hey, this next test is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great opportunity to learn and grow. Now, the second option was, this next test will be similar to the first, and you will surely do well on it. Now, the interesting thing is, out of the group that was praised for their intelligence, 67% of them chose the easier option, while 92% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. This is unbelievable to think about, how just the subtle difference in the way that they were praised had such an impact. Carol Dweck explains why this happens.
Child or adult hears, oh, you think I'm brilliant and talented. That's why you admire me. That's why you value me. I better not do anything that will disprove this evaluation. As a result, they enter a fixed mindset, they play it safe in the future, and they limit the growth of their talents. Whereas focusing on the strategies they use, the way they're stretching themselves and taking on hard tasks, the intense practice they're doing, those are the kinds of things that say to a child or an older athlete, it's about the process of growth. As a result, they don't feel, oh, if I make a mistake, you won't think I'm talented. They think, oh, if I don't take on hard things and stick to them, I'm not going to grow.
Next, Dweck and her colleagues gave all the kids a really, really difficult test. It was one that they would surely fail, but they wanted to look at how the different kids attacked this challenge. Dweck noticed that the group that was praised for effort worked harder, longer, and actually enjoyed this test more than the group that was praised for their intelligence. This group got really frustrated with this test and had the tendency to give up early. After this artificially induced failure round, all of the kids were given a third and final test. Now, this test was the same level of difficulty as the first one, but check out the results. The group that was praised for their intelligence actually did worse on this test than the first one. Their average score actually dropped by 20%, while the group that was praised for their effort did significantly better, raising their average score by nearly 30%. This is a 50% difference in performance that was caused by a few subtle differences in the way that they were praised. This study shows how praise can either make or break a child's development. I mean, we all do it. We all want to be positive with the children we work with. So teachers, coaches, parents are always looking for ways to support their kids and tend to praise them quite a bit. So we need to look at research like this and realize, okay, praise is a good thing and there's nothing wrong with being positive, but we need to be very careful about praising someone's intelligence or abilities and focus more on the process and the effort that they put.
So there it is in a nutshell. Don't praise a child for intelligence or abilities, and not for results or scores or awards either, but praise them for their effort and their process and their attitude. Now, this idea of mindset actually can really enable and empower your child to excel, to perform to their capabilities in education and other things. Or if they happen to have learned and they practice a fixed mindset, it really holds them back. And it's largely up to you. This is why 11 plus for education for parents is actually critical. And it's for that reason that I issue Carol Dweck's book. It's called simply Mindset, to, again, the parents of all children on the 11 plus course, because I think it's such an important concept for the flourishing of children. So that's mind management and mindset. They are the two by far the most important things. Then the third thing is perspective. A realistic perspective on your part allows you to apply your energies where they really count for your child. What am I talking about? Well, who's your greatest teacher? Now, some of you know this, but still, just have a think. Who comes to mind when you get asked this question? Who is your greatest teacher? Okay, well, to try and answer this question, let's look at a question going back. What knowledge, beliefs, and abilities were you born with? Well, obviously you wouldn't remember, but you can see your children and perhaps other people's children and be able to answer the question. And the answer is, well, knowledge, none. Beliefs, none. Abilities, very few. What abilities? Abilities to eat, cry, fill your nappy, wiggle around. And one very important ability that's not immediately visible, and probably the most important one of all, the ability to learn. So essentially, human babies are born as learning machines. No knowledge, no beliefs. Now, by the time they get to 10, which is the age most children are when they sit their 11 plus test, things have changed. When a child of 10, typically, if you look at their weekly hours, it comes to this. 24 hours a day times 7 gives us 168 hours a week. Let's look at the way that a child of 10 would normally spend their week. 30 hours in school, obviously not now for most children. 3 hours in tuition, if they're going to tuition, perhaps. At least 56 hours sleeping, that's 7 nights at 8 hours, possibly a bit more than that. Some extracurricular activities, whether at home or outside. And when you subtract those hours, it still leaves about 70 hours, and maybe 50, between 50 and 70 hours when they're not doing any of those other things. So what are they doing and where are they? Well, the answer is they're at home with you. So the amount of time that they spend at home with you is quite a lot more than the number of hours that they spend in school, which was the next significant chunk of time of the week. But out of those 168 hours, the child actually spends 168 hours in their own company and in their own mind. The answer is each of us is our own greatest teacher. And that does include your 10-year-old child. After that, it's our parents. So just think, when your child was born, they could not actually do anything for themselves. By the time they get to the age of 10, they can do most things for themselves. And they've learned a massive amount already by that time. And where did they learn that? Well, it was long before they went to nursery school. They learned an awful lot from you before they even went to nursery school. Amongst other things, they learned mind management from the people around them. They learned mindset from the people around them, and they learned their view of the world and their position in it from the people around them. And all those things, they shape pretty much all the other experiences of the child. Now, after that, so each of us, including your 10-year-old child, is our own greatest teacher. And after that, our parents, because they essentially shape our learning and worldview. And after that, if we're lucky enough to be parents, then it's our children, because they remind us what it is to be curious. As adults, sometimes we get so busy being adults and trying to make ends meet that we forget what it was like when we were curious. They question the things we prefer not to have to justify. We'd rather just say, because I'm your mom, I'm your dad, just do it. We don't want to have to justify it, but they want to know why. They remind us how ignorant we once were and how far we've come. Now, this is very instructive. Indulge me for a minute. Sometimes when we're trying to explain something to our child, perhaps sitting down and doing a question from a book with them and trying to explain the method. And we get very frustrated because there's something really, really basic that they seem not to know and understand. You think, where have I gone wrong? There's no hope for my child because there's something so basic here and they don't even understand that, or they don't even know that. I think if we remember that we were once completely ignorant of this thing ourselves, and somehow on the way to adulthood, it has become very obvious to us to a point where it's difficult to remember not understanding it, then that gives us hope that, yes, I was once that ignorant, that lacking in knowledge and understanding. It can give us hope that, yes, well, if we can make it, our child probably can too. Okay, so that's a very instructive thing. So that can sometimes help us to be a bit less frustrated with our children. And importantly, they're not cynical about the world yet and need never be. I mean, if they become cynical about the world, guess where they might have learned that? So when it comes to your child's flourishing, I like to, break it down into 3, 50, 40, 10, 50 to 40 to 10. So if you say 100% influence or power over your child's flourishing, it's split between 3 main groups or categories. 50% is in the hands of the child. So we're talking about at the age of 10. Obviously, when a child is a newborn, almost 100% is in the hands of the parents. And when a child is adult and independent, then it's almost 100% with them. Their flourishing is in their own hands. But by the time they get to 10, they're roughly halfway between newborn and fully fledged adult. So about 50% is in the hands of the child themselves. 40% of their flourishing at this age would be with you, the home, the parent. And 10% is the rest of the world, the external world, including formal education. Okay, now this is a really important perspective. Please don't underestimate the importance of this. Because remember what I said is that a healthy perspective allows you, mom and dad, to dedicate your efforts, your energies where they really, really count. Well, look where they really, really count. A lot of times, people that I meet in the course of my profession, they are obsessed with schools and university. They are obsessed that their child has to get to a grammar school. They has to go to this grammar. It has to be one of the top grammar schools, and they're rifling through league tables and what have you. And many of the other things that actually make a much bigger difference to their child's flourishing don't seem to get enough of a look in, like mind management and mindset. And they're putting too much of their, too large a proportion of their efforts and energies into the tiny fraction, which is the rest of the world, which includes formal education and includes tuition, people like me. But that's the really small piece. So in short, neither the academic flourishing of your child nor their flourishing as a person relies on which school or university they go to. And I think you probably know some people who have that the wrong way around. They behave as if 90% of their child's future flourishing depends on which school or university they go to. It's not. And that's good news, because that should be empowering to any parent. That should be empowering, because you know that a lot of that is in your hands. Of course, it's a great responsibility. Whoever thought parenting was not? But it should be empowering to realize that the school or the university is not the critical thing. Okay. Pay and absolve, what does this mean? Well, I do this sometimes. I do this when it comes to motor mechanics, and I do this when it comes to IT. I'm ignorant of both. I'm not interested in motor mechanics, and I have no experience of it. So when there's something wrong with my car, I'll just take it to the garage and I'll say, can you have a look, please? What's wrong? This is the problem I'm having. And they'll have a look at it, and they'll call me and they say, oh, it's going to be this, it's this that needs replacing, and it's going to cost this much. Do you want us to go ahead? And I'll always say, yes, please, can you fix it? And they'll fix it, and I'll go and pay the bill, and they'll show me some part that they took out that was broken or damaged, and I'll say, yeah, because I'm not interested, because I'm paying them to fix that problem, and I'm absolving myself of all responsibility other than to pay them for it. The same applies when I have a problem with my computer. I have no hope of getting to the bottom of it. So I just take it to a repair shop and I say, look, I'm having this problem with my computer. Can you fix it, please? They'll say, right, it needs this, that, and the other. And I'll say, okay, go ahead. And I'll pay them. And I'll say, right, they're responsible for fixing. Great. That's fine with cars and it's fine with computers if you don't have any knowledge about them, but it's not fine with your child's education. You cannot leave your primary school child with a tutor and leave them to it, because at this age, the overlap between parenting and teaching is too great. They need you. You're the 40%, they're the 50%, and tuition would be a tiny fraction of the 10%. You know, I was mentioning, I think 3 times now, the 4th time, that this is my 20th year. April, 20 years in 11 plus tuition. With all that experience and expertise, actually, there's not much I can do for your child unless you're doing an awful lot for your child. Because I'm under no illusion about my influence on your child, my ability to teach your child, unless you are on board, unless you are doing the right things. That's partly what this presentation is for. It isn't like leaving your car at a garage or your computer at a repair shop. 10-year-old child, their education, you have to be involved. And you have to be doing some things right. Okay, you're here because you want the best for your child. Well then don't compare. Don't compare. I know it's very natural, it's very simple. People do it all the time. It's very common. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. Comparing is natural and it's commonplace, but it is not a good thing when it comes to comparing like your child with their sibling. Don't ever do that. Don't ever compare your child with a sibling. Don't compare them with a parent. Don't compare them with their uncle, their grandfather, their grandmother, their schoolmate, with some celebrity. Do not compare. Why? Because comparison is unkind, it's often manipulative, and it stifles the human. The only person you should try to be better than is the person you were yesterday. So for example, if your child is kind of losing faith in their own ability to learn, it's very simple to restore it. You say to your child, not, oh, look at your brother or your sister and look that they know this, they can do this, and they've achieved this. That's not going to actually help your child at all. It's going to have the exact opposite effect. It's one of those things I mentioned earlier, where we're trying to do something good for our child. We're coming from a good place, but we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot and our child as well in the process. Don't compare. Isn't your child a worthy human being in their own right, without comparison to anyone else? I think they deserve that respect. Don't compare. So you want the best for your child. So the best for your child, right? Can I, seeing the sort of background that I'm from, which is kind of Indian background, there's a tradition there, and not just in India, but in many countries, that if a child shows any kind of academic promise, as I did when I was a kid, then mum and dad and family have all decided he's going to grow up to be a doctor. Can I just see a show of hands for my own entertainment and amusement and information? Anybody who has experienced this, that they were raised in a culture where a child shows academic promise, their destiny is decided then and there. They're going to be an accountant, they're a doctor, they're going to be an architect, or whatever it is. Usually it's doctor, by the way. Thank you. That's a significant proportion. I would say about a third of the people present have raised their hand to that. So you all understand very well where I'm coming from, what I'm talking about. I'm going to lower all hands. Thank you. If you want the best for your child, then remember, not everybody is cut out to be a doctor. They may have the capabilities, but that might not be what appeals to them. So don't decide their fate for them, because what is best for your child depends on your child. And if before they're even able to know themselves and what they like and what they don't like, the family has decided that this is what you're going to grow up to be, or there's talk of that, then they never actually get to find out what it is that they would like to do with their lives, what it is. So if you want to do the best for your child, then you have to know and respect their aptitudes, their natural inclinations, and value them for who they are, which requires that they have the opportunity to know who they are before it's all colored by what other people think that your child's going to be. So look at this one. This is the only thing I've highlighted in the entire presentation, and it's because it's so important. I don't want anyone to miss it. Sorry, it's a little bit in your face, but this is what it says. Your child's desire to please you, and don't make any mistake about it, your child may be a bit rebellious and a bit rude sometimes, and maybe not listening to you think, but they do want to please you. So your child's desire to please you can mislead you into believing that they want what you want for them, causing you to make choices that undermine their flourishing as human beings. Now, I've given this presentation like almost every month for a year, and this is the first time I've spotted a spelling mistake in this statement. Hands up if you've spotted it too. In this highlighted statement of mine, I've made a spelling mistake or a typo. Raise your hand if you've spotted it, please. By the way, this is also how I teach the children. I say, can you spot my deliberate mistake? It wasn't deliberate. All right, a couple of you have spotted it. Right, several of you have spotted it. It's only as I read it, I thought, how long has that been there? Probably a year. All right, thank you. I'm going to lower hands. Sorry about that. Causing you to make choices. There should not be an S on the end of make there. Causing you to make choices that undermine their flourishing as human beings. Let me explain this a little bit. I mean, I hope it's self-explanatory, but I think it's so important that it's incumbent on me just to make it absolutely clear. Your child wants to please you. However they behave towards you, they do. They want to please you. Now, because your child wants to please you, sometimes what they'll do is they'll say that they want to be a doctor when they grow up because they think it's what you want. They think it's what other people around them want, not because it's necessarily what they want. They probably don't even know what they want, but they'll say this in order to please you. Whatever it is that you've made kind of plain, not necessarily by spelling it out, that you would like of them, sometimes they will say that's what they want. And then you think you're doing the right thing for them because they're saying the same thing as you. But you know, you could be making poor choice for them. So be wary, be really careful about that, about you influencing your child in this way that prevents them from knowing themselves, or allowing others to influence your child in a way that your child doesn't get to know themselves. So be wary of wishing your child or trying to turn them into someone they're not. You cannot do that without stifling your child's true self. Okay, so not all children are cut out for grammar school. But so which children are cut out for grammar school? Well, the expectations and the workload in a grammar school are appropriate for children who have high academic potential. So grammar schools were created specifically for children who were thought to be or thought to have high academic potential, and they cater for those children. How high? Well, the top 25% of the academic ability range. Other children who are not in roughly the top quarter, academically speaking, grammar schools are likely to be overwhelming and damaging. Now, sometimes parents are just adamant that their child has to go to grammar school, and they don't even know what their child's academic sort of performance or potential is like. They're just adamant their child must go to grammar school for reasons of their own, which are not necessarily to do with the interest of the child. If a child is not naturally academic, does not have this kind of level of aptitude, you know, they're not at the 75th percentile when it comes to academic ability, grammar school is not a good place for them to be. Why isn't it a good place for them to be? Because they're going to be bottom of their class in everything throughout the rest of their childhood. That's why. And if you think that that's good for your kid, then I have to disagree with you, because I think that a child who is bottom of their class throughout the rest of their childhood is going to be completely destroyed. They'll have very low self-esteem, very poor opinion of themselves. And which parent wants that for their child? So I think if you have a child who is naturally academic, then grammar school may be a really good place for them to be. But if your child isn't particularly academic, grammar school is going to be a terrible place for them to be, and please don't subject your child to that. Okay, which brings us to 11 plus stuff. Let's assume that your child is particularly academic, and therefore grammar school may be a good choice for them. And so you need to prepare them for 11 plus. And if you're going to prepare your child for 11 plus, then do it properly. Otherwise, what's the point? So this is about 11 plus stuff to do with preparing for 11 plus. What is the most important thing for your child when preparing for 11 plus? Now, a year ago, before lockdown, I did this presentation in person at the Marriott Hotel in Langley. And when I asked this question, I had a few suggestions from the audience members, and they included the following: vocabulary, exam techniques, speed. And I was listening, I was thinking, yeah, come on, more. And what I didn't hear a single person come out with was this: English. Not one person thought about their actual mastery of the language. So I'm giving a wake-up call, because a lot of people appear not to realize this, that English is ace, king, and queen. So speaking of a deck of cards, the three most powerful cards in most games: ace, king, and queen. English is ace, king, and queen when it comes to 11 plus. And when I said, some people think that, oh, it's really important whether your child is sitting CEM or GL or some other form of exam. And it isn't. It isn't important at all, actually. Why do most grammar schools disclose it then if it's not important? The organization that sets the test. CEM, GL are the two most common ones, but there are others who set exams, and some schools actually set their own entrance exam. So if it's not important, why do they tell you? And if it's not important, why does the grammar school disclose the outline format of the test papers? Why, if it's not important? The answer is in the question, because it's not important. They tell you stuff that's pretty much completely useless to you. Why? Because they're protecting or trying to protect the exam, if you like, the validity of the exam. So they don't disclose anything about it that's important. And this information is not important. So if anybody is telling you, oh no, is it CEM or is it GL? And you have to prepare differently for the two, wrong. That is not the case. That is part of the hype that people spread about 11 plus. They actually test the same skills and knowledge, CEM and GL, and so do all the rest. So the important bit is not who sets the test, but what is the knowledge? What are the skills that are being tested? So when somebody talks about CEM and GL, what they're really doing is taking their eye off the ball and your eye off the ball, and the ball is the learning itself. So what is actually tested in the 11 plus tests? You need to know, because this is what your child needs to be good at. Literacy, number one. Literacy, that is reasoning with language, knowledge of and skills with British English. This is about 75% of the test. British English, notice, because there are many varieties of English. Probably children are at least as familiar with American English as they are with British English. There are other varieties. I know a lot of children on my program hear a lot of Indian or Pakistani English. There are other forms of English, Australian English, New Zealand English, South African English, and so on. But the 11 plus test isn't in any of those. It's in British English, or as I prefer to call it, English. And this is about 75% of the test, and it doesn't matter who's setting the test. How can it be 75% of the test? That's not the actual weighting of the subjects. No, it isn't. But how can it be 75%? Well, the weighting of the test normally is 50% for the English-based questions, but all the maths-based questions are also in English. And if your child isn't adept with English, they're going to struggle a lot with the maths too. Furthermore, all the instructions on the paper are in English, all the examples are in English, and all the spoken instructions are in English. And if that doesn't make up at least 75% of what is being tested on the day of the exam, then I think it's got to be more. It's got to be more than that. But I'm being conservative when I say 75% of the test is English. Of course, numeracy, all the 11 plus tests that I'm aware of, they do test numeracy, but that's relatively easy to learn, whereas the English is not. Spatial skills, so if there happens to be a paper of non-verbal reasoning, then certain spatial skills. Again, that's a very small syllabus. The ability to understand and follow instructions I've mentioned. Speed is a factor, unfortunately, but the speed comes last, because before speed, you have to have understanding of the concept and the confidence to apply the concept. And then the speed comes later. And ultimately, what a test is measuring is the ability to perform well in tests. Some children have the knack and some don't. So what is it that's needed in order to prepare for such a test? So if you're preparing a child for an 11 plus test, then this is what you need to know. What do you need? Well, children need an excellent syllabus that covers the knowledge and skills that they need. They need to be taught well. On my programs, by the way, I do all the teaching. I do it by video lessons. They need to ask and be asked a lot of questions. They need feedback. So do you. You need feedback and guidance on their learning, not just scores. They need suitable practice resources. They need someone to turn to when they have questions. Above all, they need your support, and you need someone's support. You need someone to guide you on how to support your child's learning. For this, I'm at your service. So let's come to English. I said that's not so easy to fix. Well, it isn't, but you know, we're in England. We're in an English medium, we're surrounded by English. So that does help. Children could, in addition to paying attention to English being spoken around them, read for at least 30 minutes daily, preferably an hour a day when there is no school. Now, 30 minutes daily sounds like a lot, but it isn't. I myself read for about an hour every day. Reading 30 minutes daily doesn't mean sit down for half an hour and read a book. It can mean sit down for 10 minutes in the morning before breakfast or straight after breakfast and read from a book, book one, book A. Then sit down at lunchtime or straight after lunch and read 10 minutes from book B. And then go up to bed early and read for 10 minutes from book C. That's a great way to do it. There's half an hour. It won't even feel like half an hour. They'll probably end up reading more. Read a mixture of fiction and non-fiction. Read different genres and different authors. Vary non-fiction, encyclopedias, newspapers, magazines, internet articles, lots of it available for free. All this variety is really important because it exposes children to a great variety of English usage and different vocabulary as well as knowledge. This helps children not just to come across lots of new vocabulary in context, which is the best way, and knowledge, general knowledge, increase their general knowledge, improve their understanding of the world, which helps, but also it helps them to become very adept, very skillful at quickly understanding what they read and making sense of it. And that's a very powerful life skill, because if they are able to quickly understand what they read and make sense of it, then they can basically find their way through the world and they can educate themselves about anything that they are curious about. So reading. Now, when it comes to writing, and some 11+ tests include a writing task, creative writing or extended writing, that's a slightly different skill, though it still draws on a mastery of English. Sometimes children are very good at understanding what they hear and understanding what they read, but much less good at expressing the ideas that they have in their minds. And it's not because they don't have the knowledge of English, but because they haven't practiced finding the words to express their ideas enough. So I think you can help your child with that by insisting that they speak in sentences. They express themselves clearly and accurately and don't finish their sentences for them. I know what it's like. In a home, you essentially just want to keep things running smoothly. You don't want to be a pain in the neck to your child. You know what they mean, so you feel inclined to make your child say actually what they mean. But actually, it's partly because their friends don't need them to say exactly what they mean because they have their own language and they kind of get each other. And the same applies at home. Within our homes, we all know ourselves and each other so well that we don't have to actually express ourselves very well in order to be understood. But there's a price for that. And the price is that we're not getting enough practice at actually expressing our ideas. And this happens to many children. And when it comes to creative writing, then it really shows, because that is about expression. I mentioned this already, it's much better to learn words in context as far as possible in order to appreciate their usage and their meanings, and to learn a few words every day. I do quite regularly get requests from parents of children on my programs to provide them with a vocabulary list suitable for 11th class, and I never provide one. The reason is because I know many tutors do. I don't think much of that practice. I'll explain briefly why. Depending how you count, the English language can be said to have more than 1 million words in it. This actually varies really widely depending on how you define what is a word. Some people put it down to fewer than 200,000 words, but some say more than 1 million. It's a lot. And none of us can hope to, even in a lifetime dedicated to learning the words, hope to know all the words, even if it is fewer than 200,000 words. and I wouldn't recommend anybody does. But what I'm being asked to do when I'm asked for a vocabulary is to be a foreseer, a prophet, someone who can predict which words are going to come up in the exam. And I can't, and nobody can. No tutor that can. And if they pretend to by providing you with a list of 2,000 words, 5,000 words, 10,000 words, 20,000 words, they're deceiving you. Because it's quite possible that, yes, your tutor gives you a list of 20,000 words to learn and your child spends all their spare time diligently learning those words. And then when they go into the exam, not a single one of those 20,000 words was in the exam. I think they can feel hard done by, and quite rightly so. So let's not pretend that there's a list of words you need to learn for 11 plus, and once you've learned it, you're ready. That's not the case. And that's why I don't provide a vocabulary list. It's not a good way to learn words. You could develop your own English and vocabulary that would encourage your child, which brings me to this. If it's good enough for mom and dad. You know, I was trying to extol the virtues of reading, and I'm sure you do that also to your child. But you know what would be really persuasive is them seeing you read. You know, I issue these books, Chimp Paradox and Mindset, to the parents of children on the 11 plus course. What a great opportunity for you to be reading in front of them. Not only reading in front of them, but then also discussing the concept, the ideas, and how you might be able to implement them with your child. If you can't see how that would enthuse your child to read and learn and discuss what they're learning about, what a wonderful opportunity that is. Please do that. Because that is the most convincing way to show your child that reading is good if you yourself do it in front of them and share your reading with them. So you need to be a good role model of learning, of reading, of mind management and a growth mindset, because they're learning these values from you. You cannot get away with saying, don't say, you know, do as I say, not as I. You can't get away with that, you know, because to little children, they look up to their parents. Parents can do no wrong. So if it's good enough for mom and dad, surely it's good enough for them. So if you want your child to believe in persevering with efforts to learn, let them see a worthy example to follow. You must persevere with efforts to learn. So when you're choosing tuition, some of the things to look for. It should optimize learning, not testing, i.e. they need to have the knowledge, the skills that are going to be tested. Doesn't matter how brilliant their exam technique is, if they don't have the knowledge and the skills there, what is it they're going to demonstrate? They're going to demonstrate their ignorance. So they may have great speed and great exam technique, but if they lack the knowledge and the skills that are being tested, they're just going to demonstrate their ignorance. So tuition should optimize learning. The group has to be small. Why? Oh, it's absolutely critical. As a teacher for 35 years and tutor for 20 of those, I'm telling you, the group needs to be small. Small so that during a live lesson, the children have ample opportunity to participate. The bigger the group, the less opportunity to participate. The interaction between the tutor and the child and between the children really enriches the learning experience, as well as making it more engaging. The tutor, if it's a small group, like single figures, can get to know the specific strengths and weaknesses, the learning needs of a child, and communicate them to the child and to the parent, so that you can also be empowered to know, where is it that you can help your child and how. Group has to be small for that purpose, meaning single figures. The tutor marks some of the homework. If you're looking at tuition, if the tutor needs to see your child's work done independently for themselves too, some of it. And if everybody says they're good, but who backs it up with a money-back guarantee? I do. Choosing tuition, run a mile if. So these are some red flags, some warnings If you see these things, you think, oh, wait a minute, let me just have a think about this. If they pack more than about a dozen children into a room, doesn't matter how many assistants there are, how many tutors there are. If there's more than a dozen kids in a room, it's a crowd, and it's nothing to do with learning. It's to do with money making. If they give a pre-test before accepting pupils, that is an admission of, I can't teach your child, so they better already, have what it takes. Otherwise, I can't do anything for them. That's an admission of defeat. I don't select children for the program because I believe that if a child has the potential and they have the determination, that they have the opportunity to learn what they need to learn, the knowledge, the skills. They may or may not make it through the 11 plus, but if they have potential and they have determination, they're interested, they're hungry for learning, they're going to learn an awful lot on the program. A pre-test, what does it tell you? It doesn't tell you about a child's appetite for learning, and it doesn't tell you about their capacity to learn. So what does it tell you? It tells you what they already know, what they can already do. If the tutor doesn't mark any of the homework, that's a flag. If you yourself do not have access to the learning, you then have at least one hand tied behind your back. If the focus is more on testing rather than on the learning, or on the volume of work rather than on the quality of work, that's a red flag. If they stoke up hype about exam techniques, test scores, CEM and GL, who's setting the exam, the format of the paper, mocks, and so on. Because all of those things take focus away from actually learning the knowledge and the skills that are being tested. A little plug, the values expressed in this presentation are encapsulated in my courses. We use a highly interactive small group format. We work at optimizing our collaboration with you in a number of ways. I'm not going to go into that now. My flagship 11 plus course, which is for children once they go into year 5, is so effective that it comes with a money-back guarantee. This is for the classroom-based course. I don't know of anyone else who's confident enough or believes enough in what they're doing to actually do that. My foundation course is an excellent stepping stone to the 11 plus course. So the foundation course is for children when they are in year 4, and it is designed to prepare children for the 11 plus course. It is not a prerequisite for the 11 plus course, but if children have done the foundation course, they find the 11 plus course easier to get used to, because the 11 plus course is very demanding. And we normally run lessons, I say normally because of course it's not normal at the moment, in Feltham, Hounslow, Heston, Cranford, Langley, Slough, and we do have a distance learning program, which means you just access live lessons or your child, both via Zoom. And I'll mention that if you do have a child who's now in year 4, they can join the foundation course and it would be a good opportunity for them. It doesn't matter that they've joined partway through, it'll still be good preparation for the 11 plus course. And they can join the 11 plus course from the beginning. We'll be opening bookings for the 11 plus course in late April, early May. And if you have a child who's now in year 3, you'll soon, sort of late April, early May, be able to apply for next year's foundation course. Now, I do get asked, well, Zoom or room, distance learning or classroom-based? Well, it's the same course, the same lesson, same resources, same everything. The difference is literally, does your child access the lesson, the live lesson via Zoom, or do they access the live lesson in a room? Well, the live lesson itself, for a start, is only about 25% of the commitment to the program. The other 75% happens at home. And that's regardless of whether you have live lessons via Zoom or room. That's an important thing to bear in mind. For the distance learning course, i.e. live lessons are via Zoom, obviously, it's convenient and it's safe because your child is at home in your care. It saves money because that program is a lot less expensive, and it saves time and effort on your part and your child's part, because you don't have to get ready to go travel, and you don't have to travel to the venue. You don't have to then travel back to the venue to collect your child and wait in a queue whilst they're being signed out and so on. So it can save you a lot of time and effort. And the standard course with live lessons taking place in a room. Well, if your child is in a room, they are not at home. They're in an environment where they essentially have nothing else to do except to be in the lesson. So it can be less distracting for some children. And the tutor has greater scrutiny over what your child is doing through the lesson. So those are the differences. Now, some children, they don't score well in the 11+ tests. And very often parents quite rightly are concerned, well, why is that? Well, here are some popular suspects that, these are suspects, that is some of the answers that parents tend to give me. Not in that they didn't do enough mock tests. They didn't use the right practice papers. They should have had tutor B and not tutor A. Their exam technique was poor. They should have done lessons in a room instead of via Zoom. But these are rarely the true culprits when a child doesn't perform that well in an 11+ test. So what is the number one reason why children tend to underperform or perform poorly in 11+ tests? And then what can you do about it? Well, it's a lack of love of learning, not a lack of parental love, a lack of love of learning for its own sake. A utilitarian means to end approach to learning. It's a bit cynical, actually, not valuing the learning for its own sake, but, oh, you need to study so you can pass your 11+, you know, that kind of attitude. That's not a love of learning. And most often it's a lack of love of English, a lack of love of learning English, of mastering English. That, in my view, is the number one specific thing that causes children to perform poorly. And what can you do about it? Well, replace the means to an end view of learning with a love of learning for its own sake value. Encourage, praise, acknowledge, and model a love of learning English, not just formal learning, but as an enthusiast. What I mean is some parents, I mean, even just yesterday or the day before, somebody contacted us, a new person, and they were seeking tuition for their child in English. But English isn't really learned in a classroom in that way. Not in quite the same way that you can learn mathematics or non-verbal reasoning in a classroom. The tutor just shows you, these are the facts you need to know. This is a method you can use for doing this operation. And by doing this operation and that operation, you can solve this problem. That sort of thing lends itself to being learned in a classroom, but not mastery of English. Its language is way too sophisticated to be learned in the classroom. Anybody who's tried to learn a foreign language, which I expect most of us have, will realize that you can't really learn mastery of a language in the classroom. I myself, when I was in high school, I studied French for 5 years, and my mastery of French after all that time and effort is pathetic. And if I had to sit an 11+ test in French, I would probably be lucky to get the minimum score. So no, the classroom is not the place where English is learned. In short, practice and nurture a growth mindset. That's what you can do about it. Why doesn't every child who completes my brilliant course qualify for 11+? Well, there's lots of answers for that. The test is designed to get a spread of scores. That's the point of the 11+ test. The 11+ test is not a test that every child can pass, because every child prepared really thoroughly and they were really, really clever. If every child was really, really clever and they prepared really thoroughly, still only about 25% would pass. That's because the whole point of the 11+ is to try and cream off the top 25%. So guaranteed in the 11+, 75% don't get to pass. That's the number one reason. Many children have poor mind management skills. Many children trick themselves on the day of the exam. They feel sick, they feel nervous, they feel phased, they have a mental block because they think that this 11+ test is something more than just an opportunity for them to show what knowledge and skills they have. They trick themselves. On the day of the exam and in preparing for the exam, they trick themselves too. They are practicing too much of a fixed mindset. They lack foundation, meaning that they're preparing for 11+, but they can barely string two words together of English. They don't know their times tables. They have to rely on pencil and paper to add 2 and 2. I'm exaggerating a little there. But you know, sometimes I literally ask a child, what is 10 add 10? And they will write down using the column method 10 + 10. Somebody who's preparing for 11+. They're that reliant on pencil and paper methods. They're lacking the foundation of mental arithmetic skills. Their understanding of number is so lacking. And I can teach them, I can show them, but there's so much that you can do in the last 2 years before a child sits their 11+, but it's finite. Sometimes for various reasons, the parents are not in a position to support their child as their child really needed. They may just have had a bad day on the day of the test for reasons which nobody can quite understand. They just are not cut out for grammar school. That's back to number 1. Remember, 3 out of 4 children are not cut out for grammar school, and grammar school would be wrong for them. Now, pink screen means this is the answer to the question, the 3 critical things, 3 crucial things that some parents get right re 11+. I'll elaborate a little bit on each one, but you know, I've already covered them. I'm just putting them all together here. They use 11+ to enrich the relationship with their child. That's one thing that people get right, and that's the single most important thing. Sometimes I have the great privilege of speaking to many parents via Zoom. It's part of what I do. I have individual consultations. By the way, anybody here present, if you would like an individual consultation with me, all you do is call my support team and say, oh, Mr. Taylor said I could have a Zoom consultation. Can I arrange it, please? I'll be very happy to meet you and speak with you individually. But I do have the privilege of speaking with many parents and their children sometimes. And it's so pleasing for me to see that so many of the parents have very enlightened, and that they demonstrate that they haven't lost perspective. They haven't sort of sold out to the insanity of 11+, which does exist out there, and that they are able to actually keep focus on the fact that this is all about their child's welfare. 11+ and grammar school are not ends in themselves. Those are options that may or may not come to transpire. In the end, ultimately, it's still about your child's flourishing, your child's well-being. And I see that some parents, when they speak with me, I can see it just shining out, that they really get it, that they're not obsessed with 11+, got to get there, got to get into grammar school. They are not letting 11+ therefore get in the way of their relationship with their child. If anything, they're enriching their relationship with their child, because what do? They're doing it with their child, not to their child. It's not something they're subject to their child to, and it's not something they're doing for their child, whether they like it or not. They're working on it with their child. It's something you're doing together with your child. And it's then a bonding experience. And it is not charged with stress, frustration, irritation. It actually is working together, and it's a supportive kind of relationship, and it can really enrich a relationship. This is the number one most crucial thing that some parents get right. They use 11+ preparation to enrich their relationship with their child, because it can so easily damage it if without you realizing that's what's happening. They prioritize learning over scores. They make it about the learning. In other words, they're nurturing a growth mindset. They bring in a growth mindset. That also just shines out when I speak to somebody with the growth mindset, because they're not obsessed with scores. They're not upset because their child got a low score. When their child does get a low score in something, they're curious, just like I am, as to why did this child get such a low score on this particular test or this particular paper? Let's have a look at this question and see what it is that they didn't know or they didn't understand. Here's a great learning opportunity. That's how they look at it. That's how I look at it. That's a growth mindset. So they prioritize the learning over the scores. And when it comes to the result of the 11 plus, if their child doesn't make it, they are not upset. They don't let their child see that they're upset, and they don't feel upset about the fact that their child didn't make it, because all the stuff that was in your control and all the stuff that was in your child's control was done before the exam. And there's nothing you can do about it after the day of the exam. So when the result comes that day, maybe it's what you were hoping for, maybe it isn't. But your child has put in their effort. And whatever they've learned, they have learned. Whatever efforts they've made, congratulate them for their efforts. And number 3, they keep the hype merchants at arm's length. What I mean are the people who stoke up the hype and they create this mania around 11 plus, don't get caught up in it. So the parents who get this right, they keep at arm's length the people who spread the hype, and they don't get caught up in it, and they don't allow their child to get caught up in it. In other words, they give their humans a chance. That is the parent and the child, the household. They give their humans a chance. That's the thinking person, the one with the noble motives, by keeping the chimps at bay. And for sure, if you do allow your child or yourself to be exposed to the hype and the hype merchants, it does bring the chimp out. So this is it. These are the 3 crucial things that some parents get right, re 11 plus. And I think you can see that if they get those things right, it's a win-win situation, regardless of what happens in the test, regardless of what the score comes out as. If they get these 3 things right, 11 plus is a win-win. You'll come out with your child having much greater knowledge and skills than they had before. Your relationship with your child will be enriched, whether they get to grammar school or not. So this is regardless of the actual result in the test. It's all win if you get these 3 things right. And some parents do. So we're right at the end of my bit, right on time. It's just coming up to 10 to 12. So a summary, flourishing, and we're talking about your child, but this does actually apply to anybody, but flourishing requires effective mind management and a growth mindset. These are the most important things. Got nothing to do with schools, got nothing to do with tuition, got a lot to do with parenting. Then perspective, the 50, 40, 10, remember? At age 10, your child has 50% of the power over their own flourishing. You have 40%. That makes a whopping 90% is in the household, and 10% is the rest of the world, of which some of it is school, and a teeny bit of it is me, the tutor. Just keep that in mind. So don't get obsessed with tuition and school and what have you, because they're not the big players. So give due attention to the overwhelmingly important role of a child and parents and the relative insignificance of schooling and tuition. A mastery of English is paramount in 11 plus tests. So if you want your child to bust a gut learning something, that should be English. Choose small group tuition so that it's not sort of a every child for himself, sink or swim situation. It should maximize engagement, interaction, and learning rather than testing. Okay, I hope you found some of the things that I have shown you useful. So I have a request. Please tell your friends that if they have a child in year 3 or 4, this is a really good time to inform themselves, to look ahead. so that they can make choices that are in keeping with their values. If they're serious about preparing their child for 11 plus, they should talk to me ASAP. I have tried to be a friend to you, somebody who knows this industry very well and prepares children. This is my profession. And I've tried to be totally honest and upfront with you and put it all into perspective. And I request simply that you be a friend back to me and recommend at least my presentation, if not my program, to friends. Very happy to share freely what I know. We do have an autumn offer. Some of you will be aware, and the autumn offer is primarily designed to help late joiners to the course to do some catching up if they have the time. And what we do is normally a late joiner would pay for the resources that were issued prior to them joining. But what we're doing is we're waiving the charge for videos and worksheets issued in the autumn term. So you'd only pay for books. And that amounts to £144 worth of free education for the foundation program and £309 worth of free education on the 11 plus program. You would pay only for the books that we issued in the autumn. This means that a new pupil has free access to a term's worth of learning. They just have to bring the appetite for it. I have an end thought which I always like to share. Every parent, i.e. you, has the chance to make the world a better place by the example they set for their children. What's the alternative? Okay, thank you very much for your attention. That brings my presentation to an end. If you have to leave, then stay well. But it would be a pity if you do have to leave, because the Q&A is going to take place now. And for me, it's the most interesting thing. If you do have a question, please try and keep it brief so that everybody has an opportunity to ask their questions. And I will try not to embarrass anybody, but I do from time to time refer back to the Chimp and fixed mindset thinking. And if there is an unhealthy perspective, I just try to put you straight. No disrespect intended, but I'm just quite straightforward. If you have a question, then raise your hand. If you unmute yourself and just say hello, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, indeed, I can. Wow, first time. Hello, please ask your question.
Yeah, that was a lovely presentation, by the way, very informative.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my question is, because of the pandemic this year, what's the process in admissions and applying for exams?
I think what I'll do is, for the other people here who are on my program, I'll be giving you monthly newsletters starting this month for the people who are on the 11 plus program anyway, to keep you informed about that. But thank you very much for asking this question. The schedule for registering your child to sit the 11 plus test, for the actual dates of the test themselves, and for the closing date for you to say which schools you would like your child to be considered for, none of those has changed this year. Now, actually, that was also the position at this time last year. This time last year, February last year, that was the case, nothing had changed. But as the pandemic went on and it dragged on into the autumn, then 11 plus tests were pushed back. Now, the tests themselves, most of them anyway, were pushed back by a few weeks or a couple of months, but the registration process was not. So registration for 11 plus tests for Slough and Buckinghamshire and others tends to open on the 1st of May. So there is nothing for parents to do this term. It's in the summer term. So you can register your child from normally the 1st of May. And they leave the registrations open for a number of weeks. And for Slough, I'm just checking my diary because I did not note down some dates. Okay, they're not finalized yet for Slough, but normally the registrations open on the 1st of May and they close in late June. So you have about 8 weeks to register, which is ample time because it's literally an online form and it just takes a few minutes to do. But what I do is for people who are on the program, I'll write to you to notify you that registrations open at this date, they close on that date. If you want your child to sit that exam, make sure you register for them. And coming up to the closing date, I tend to send a reminder just to make sure, because we get busy with things and sometimes we forget. So the schedule of registering your child is no different from any other year. Registrations open around the 1st of May and they tend to close in sometime in June or July. The 11+ tests themselves are spread out over a number of weeks, but the earliest ones take place in early September, very early, right around the time that schools resume. And some take place as late as early October. And then schools which have a stage 2 test, they take place normally in November. The deadline by which you parents have to decide, these are the schools I would like, this is the local authority form. You send to your local education authority. Normally you have 6 choices or up to 6 choices. These are the schools you would like your child to be considered for. The deadline for that is the 31st of October. And that deadline was unchanged last year, though they did allow you to make amendments until something like the 12th of December because of delay with the 11+ test and then delay with getting the result. So, but the deadline to submit it was still the 31st of October. So I believe, madam, that none of those dates has yet been changed. So what I do is I'll inform parents of whatever dates have already been published or announced officially. And then whether they change or not depends almost entirely on what happens with the pandemic. It is hoped that because of the vaccine being widely distributed and having a big take-up, that I hope it won't be necessary to change the schedule at all. So I'm quite optimistic that this schedule will run as normal. And I'm certainly proceeding on that basis. We're running the course on the normal schedule. The course, the 11+ course, is scheduled to finish in early September, just in time for the children to start the 11+ tests. And so we're proceeding on that basis.
Okay, that's great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, we also have a hand up from Sushma Gurung. I'm going to enable you to speak. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Good morning, Salt Taylor.
Good
It's
morning.
Susma Sospain.
Hello. Please
Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. That was a very informative presentation. I really, I liked it. It has been a guidance for me.
Thank you.
And I have a questions. I got like 2 kids. One is like 10 years, which I like presently attending the Tailor classes, and the other one is 5 years.
Right.
You know what I face a problem. The problem is that his little brother enjoys playing, and while the other one goes for reading, and it's kind of like a psychological prospect. He sees his younger brother enjoying playing and goes into reading. So at times it's very difficult for me to make him understand the situations. It might be a silly question, but so Taylor, how can I motivate my elder son? Is there any better techniques to
It's very far from a silly question. No, sir, not at all. It's a really important concern because most of the children pursuing 11+ are not the only child in the home. And sometimes they have older siblings and sometimes they have younger siblings. And this is a situation that parents bring to my attention and seek some support. What I do in this situation, and sir, I would encourage you to do this, telephone the support team. You can do it today. There's somebody there between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. every day to answer the phone. telephone them and say that you would like to arrange a Zoom consultation with me. And when you do that, have either yourself or your wife and the son, who is your child who's doing the program at the moment?
Yeah, it's Sambar, the elder one, 10
Right,
years.
okay.
Right.
So, right. So have your child also attend this Zoom consultation, because what I do is I speak to the child in order to help them get a better perspective. And it's usually works a little better than, essentially I'll be telling them the same things you would be telling them. But when they hear it from somebody else, somebody independent, somebody not part of the household, then it has more of an impact. And if you're there to witness it, then you can then refer to the things I have said to your child, just to remind them, and in order to help them keep a good perspective on it. But the essence of it, what I would say to children in that situation is, I would say to the older child, the one who's doing the course, who is being distracted by the younger child, I would say this: how do you want your younger brother or sister to grow up? Do you want them to enjoy learning? Do you want them to be their best selves? What do you want for your younger brother or sister when they grow up? And of course, they love their sibling and they want the best for their child. So I make them think about that. And when they say that, it must come from them. I'm asking the question and they come to me saying that they want their younger sibling to actually learn a lot, to be intelligent, to make the best of their capabilities. And then I say to them, so when they are 9 years old and 10 years old, would you want them to be playing all the time? Or would you want them to be putting their minds to it as well as playing, so they've got a healthy balance in their lives? And of course, it's a loaded question, but I'm trying to direct the children's thinking and put it into perspective for them. And of course, the child will say, well, I want them to develop their capabilities and learn, because they need to learn in order to progress through life. So they understand that. So the way I approach this issue, sir, is I try to avoid it coming across as a lecture, and I tend to do it by question and answer. So the questions are loaded, but they're directing the child to shape their thinking somewhat, so that they just have a little bit of a healthier perspective on it. So I'm getting them to think a bit maturely. And when they say that they want their younger sibling to make the best of their potential, then I say to them, so if you want your younger sibling to study, who do you think they're looking up to as a role model for them? And of course, they know that their younger brother or sister is looking up to them as a role model. And so then they understand that if they want their younger brother or sister in some time in future to do their best, they need to be doing their best right now. So children of that age, 9 and 10, are very unselfish in a way. They have, when they do things, a lot of it is not for their own interest. They're doing it because it's what mom and dad want. Right. They're not thinking about themselves, but it's almost as if they don't care enough about themselves, but they care about their younger brother or sister. So what I'm getting them to do is to use their caring about their younger brother or sister in order to care more about themselves. So that's one thing that I do. Another thing that I do when I speak with children in that position is I try to make them look ahead. So look ahead to their future selves. And I make them think about what kind of an older child and a younger adult would they like to be, what they aspire to be. And generally, they would prefer to be kind of well-educated and, if you like, getting good results in tests and opening doors for themselves to, courses and careers. So they have choices. And I say, those doors that you want to be able to open, a lot of that depends on where you put your efforts now. you can follow the lead of your younger brother or sister, but they're not at this stage of learning this critical stuff. You are. Now you have to look at yourself in 6 years, 10 years, and think, in 6 years or 10 years, what I can do by that time does depend a lot on the basic things I learn here and now. So I need to do it a bit for myself as well, but they need to care a bit about themselves first to be able to do that. So I think that that's what I try to do. And it's always unique because it does depend on what response I get from the child when I ask them the questions. But I would say that if you just persevere and persevere, they'll probably just get fed up of you nagging. And then, so what you're saying loses its impact. So rather than you trying to give pep talks, if it's not working, then let me try and support your efforts. And if you're there when I speak with your child, you then can use the same kind of approach and essentially reinforce and remind your child about the conversation that they had with me. And that can help them just to look ahead a little bit, rather than just feel like, oh, they're missing out on that play. They just learn very quickly to think a little bit more maturely about themselves.
Sure, Tailor. I really did like the first point that you highlighted. They're very unselfish in nature, and they like to, you know, kind of like imitate their, you know, the parents and the good things about parents.
Yes.
And one more quiz, that the second one, like you said, showing the prospective future.
Yes.
Do you think the child will be able to take such a massive statement about the future? Will they be able to judge the?
Yes, sir, because it's an exercise of the imagination. Oh, and they're brilliant at that, sir, at using their imagination. I think if you, I'm really happy and to give it a go, sir. And you know, it's worth a try. And sometimes what happens is that children are very different. I'm sure many of you parents here, actually raise your hand if, I'm going to lower all hands just for a moment, because there were one or two other people who wanted to ask a question. I've just lowered all hands. Raise your hand if you have heard from your child's school teacher a description of a child which doesn't match the child that you know at home, that it's as if they're talking about a different child. Raise your hand if you've had that experience. There's a good number of you who have raised your hand. I find that it's not a rare thing. More hands have gone up. That sometimes a child seems disinterested at home, can't get them to sit down to do their work, and they don't listen to mom or dad. And then when they're at school, they're as good as gold. They put 100% effort. They do everything that the teacher tells them to do, and they get this glowing report. And then you look at the report and you think, wait a minute, is that even my child you're talking about? This is not uncommon. Children can behave very differently. And sometimes if a parent was in a position to be a fly on the wall when their child is in school, they'd think, oh, what an angel. Why aren't they like that when they're at home? It can be quite a revelation. So I think that the experience you have of trying to talk with your child, it's different when they're talking to me, because I'm not home, I'm not family, I'm not, if you like, part of that circle. So it can have a different impact. I'm not saying that it's foolproof, nothing is, but I think that that's the way I would recommend proceeding.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much.
It did give me a little, I mean, like it did give me kind of like a, you know, self-satisfaction in talking to you. Thank you.
Well, sir, please arrange this consultation. I really think it's worth having a go at it, and I would be glad
Definitely.
to help.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next person with their hand up is Olushola. I'm going to allow you to speak. So Olushola, please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly.
Lovely. Thank you very much for a very informative talk. I suppose was wanting to ask some more practical questions around your tuition scheduling, especially with all of the uncertainty the pandemic brings this year.
Yes.
Do you already have a timetable for what your September 2021 year 5, 11 plus course will look like? Will you be also running parallel distance learning as well as face-to-face, so that parents like us that live quite a good distance away from where your proposed centres might be can still avail of the course, but perhaps maybe have the convenience of being able to do this via distance learning? And in the event that we do want to consider travelling, it looks like your closest centre to us might be Slough. Do you already have a timetable in terms of what days of the week you will be running the courses for, where they will be running from, or is it too far ahead given the uncertainty that the pandemic brings to be able to give us that information now?
Thank you very much. We haven't finalized the details. We haven't booked the venues. Some of the venues themselves are uncertain about when they will allow external events like ours to take place. Even with schools, even though schools might reopen and start running from early March, most schools are not allowing external events to take place. They're just running school and nothing else. So because of that, some of the venues we're not yet able to book. However, we do have a plan of which days we're going to run lessons, and what we have planned is to run lessons on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, Saturday being the most popular day, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and possibly Thursday. So in essence, that was every day of the week except Mondays for the 11 plus program, and not as many slots for the foundation program because it's not as popular. So it's most days of the week. As for venues, you're right. We're based in terms of classroom-based courses. We have them taking place in West Middlesex. So that's Feltham, Hounslow, Heston, Cranford, that side, that's West Middlesex, and Slough Langley area. So those are the places where classroom-based lessons run, and we're planning to start running those from September. So for people who live in those areas, that's a realistic option. Now, as a matter of fact, we had planned all of those for the September that just gone, and the lessons did begin in a variety of venues, and then we were forced to cancel all venue-based lessons, and right now no venue-based lessons are running. We're waiting for the current lockdown to end before we can resume a few of them. But in the meantime, there's this wonderful option of accessing the live lessons via Zoom. So even for the current course, the options were there to have the live lesson in a room or have the live lesson via Zoom. Many people had signed up for their children to have live lessons in a room, and then that option disappeared because the venue closed. Like, for example, Heston School was one. I was teaching in Heston School on a Friday. I taught lesson number 1 of the course, and then the school contacted us at the weekend to say, we're cancelling all bookings until further notice, and they haven't reopened yet. And this was because 1 or 2 cases of coronavirus were found in the school. So of course they had to err on the side of caution. So this kind of thing did happen. Fortunately, all the children who were attending live lessons in a room, we were able to cater for them to have their live lessons via Zoom instead. And it's the same lesson, it's just that they're doing it from home. Now we're planning to have the same facility for the course starting this autumn, where parents have the choice of this venue, that venue, or that venue if they happen to live in West Middlesex or in or around Slough Langley. But we do have people who are currently have a child on the program from as far afield as Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, Hampshire, Kent. So we have children from all those parts at least, who are on the current program. And of course, their children are having the live lessons via Zoom. So that facility would still be there. So the answer to your question is, although we're not opening bookings until late April or early May, we are planning to run the 11 plus on most days of the week. We're planning slots most days of the week, I think, except for the Monday evening, and fewer slots for the foundation. Parents who live in the area will have the choice of room or Zoom. The course is the same, whether you do it via Zoom or in a room, but the room option is significantly more expensive because it costs a good bit to hire the room, and there are other costs involved with that. So yes, that is what is planned, madam. And I don't know for sure if I answered all the bits of your question. Did I?
Yes, you did. Thank you. Just one additional sort of follow-up, if I may. If you are going to be doing a sort of hybrid Zoom and room, would you still be able to cater for the small numbers that you were talking about at the start of your talk? Or does the fact that you're doing a hybrid of room and Zoom then means that the class numbers overall will be slightly larger?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't stand for that. No, the group has to be small, whether it's in a room or it's via Zoom. I don't want to be getting over into single figures. So when children switched over, like for example, if you take my group, this illustrates the point and the answer to your question, madam. I was teaching a group on a Friday evening, 11 plus group in Heston School, which had 8 children. Yes, that's right. And when Heston School, after lesson number 1, said, sorry, Mr. Taylor, we're cancelling all bookings, then from the very next Friday, I was teaching those same children, but via Zoom. So I was teaching them, same 8 children, but I was doing the lesson via Zoom. That's all. And the same happened with the other groups, because we were running other lessons in Heston School on the weekend too. And they too simply transferred to Zoom. So no, the short answer to that, and I'm really glad you asked the question, because it allows me the opportunity to emphasize the importance of the small group. I won't compromise on that. It has to be a small group, and I keep it in single figures. Just very occasionally we touch 10, but it normally, because it was unavoidable, my policy is that we keep to single figures. And I would not compromise on that, because it's so important for the children's learning.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking, madam. There's a hand up from Dami D. I'm just enabling you to speak, so please unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can.
All right, thanks for the presentation. I think my questions are in 2 parts. The first one would be, how do you, in terms of scrutiny, you did say that the Zoom class is relatively different from the room class, at least. How is scrutiny actually done from a Zoom point of view? How do you maintain that level of scrutiny with the kids, or rather in terms of the quality of work of the children?
Right. Well,
and the second part, if I could, if you want me to, yes. So I'm also mindful of the fact that you said there will be a lot of work that needs to be done by the parents, which is fine, which is expected. But I'm worried that, how do we ensure that we are doing the right things? Is there going to be some kind of guidance, if you'd like, from school? Sorry, I've got a baby in my hand. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Let me take both of those. Room versus Zoom. Scrutiny. You can't have the same level of scrutiny of the children's work in a Zoom lesson as you can in a live lesson. So we don't pretend that we can. But what we do, you see, when the children are in the room, first of all, you can see the whole child. You can see their desktop. You can see the book or the paper, the worksheet that they're working on. You can see whether they're writing or they're not writing. You can see whether they're, fidgeting with their feet. We can't see those things in a Zoom lesson. We can see the child's face upper body. That's about it. So we can't have quite the same scrutiny of the child's work. But what we do is we ask at the start of the lesson the children to actually show their work. Since you've asked the question, so what I'm going to do, it's a very good question, by the way, I appreciate you asking it, is I'm going to show you me conducting a lesson, because you can see one of the things that I'm referring to. I'm just going to, there's a video on my desktop, I'm just starting it up. Give me a second. Okay, I'll just get it to a suitable point. I'm going to share my screen and show you this video. This is a recording of one of my lessons, which is for 11 plus. That's just me waiting to start. And this is a checklist for children to use at the beginning of the lesson to make sure they've got all their things. And then one of the things I do, multiplication and division, but a special one. Which one was it? You threw away 1 mark. Okay, so watch out for that, right? Because when you multiply, there's a bit early in the lesson where a little closer to the camera, because I'm not able quite to make out exactly what it is. Okay, it's a bit fuzzy. How far did you get? What's the last number?
Number 62.
62?
No, 63.
63, okay. Now tell me, what was word number 60 in yours?
A bird.
Okay, now without looking at it, what part of speech is the word abode?
It's a noun.
And what is abode?
It's a place or a resistance.
Resistance, did you say?
Yeah, resistance.
Resistance, abode. That doesn't sound right to me. I would check that if I were you. But without looking at your book, tell me a synonym of abode. Now, without looking, come on. Home. Okay. Residence, home. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So this resistance thing, I'm a bit doubtful about. Have a look if you like. Can you all look at abode in your dictionary? Because I'm not sure about this resistance meaning of abode. I'm looking in the to be more thorough. Okay? Because you missed something that's right there in black and white, right under your nose. All right? So you can't be doing that. You have to be more thorough, I think. All right. Thank you very much. Arjun, may I see your queries and then your vocab book? Right, I'm seeing 3 queries there. Thank you. And your vocab book. I won't play any more right now, but what I was showing you, sir, is that there is a part of the lesson where I'm physically looking at the children's work, because the question was, one was about scrutiny. So one of the things that children are required to do is to bring some queries to the lesson, written queries. So I'm asking them to literally hold up to their camera the queries that they have written down. They are also required to add 3 words per day to their vocabulary books. So that's 21 words a week, or that lesson was straight after a break. So they had 3 weeks worth of words, 63 words. So that young man had added 63 words. And I'm looking at their book to see that they've done that and asking them about a couple of the words that they've added to see that, you know, they did actually do it and that they did do it diligently. So that's part of the scrutiny of the children's work. Another way that we're able to exercise scrutiny over the children's work when it's a Zoom lesson is that the children, part of their homework is done online using an online annotation tool. And the children are to do that without the help of parents. They're meant to do it on their own. They can use whatever resources, they can use the dictionary, they can study the video lesson again, look at their notes, look at their fact sheet, but to do it unaided. And that work is marked by the tutor directly. So we get to see directly the child's work, and that gives us scrutiny over their understanding and their effort on their work. So that's actually very significant scrutiny. And although we're not able to see the whole child or what else might be going on and what they're looking at on their desk and so on, we can actually check some things, and we do that. Now, I've forgotten what the second part of your question was. I hope you don't mind repeating it.
I can repeat it. So I was saying that you did mention that there will be a lot of support from the parents,
right? And
rightly so. But it's not about just the support; it's the right type of support, right? And I'm worried that one would try with good intentions. You're trying to support the kid, but you're not necessarily supporting correctly. Is there going to be, for some pointers, if you'd like, from your from you guys, and probably the best things to do to help them with 11 plus?
More than some. Actually, we do have a veteran of my program here, and rather than me answering it, I wonder if any of the parents who have already had a child on my course might be able to let this gentleman have some answer about. I'm going to lower all hands for a second. If you think you can give some reassurance to this gentleman about the guidance that is given to parents about how they can support their child, would you please raise your hand? Otherwise, it's down to me and I will be glad to do it. Okay, thank you. Claire Davis has raised her hand. I'm going to allow you to speak, Claire, to answer this question. Please, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Give some data, please. Sorry.
You boom boom. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
My daughter joined the course just a month ago, actually. So she's already well underway.
Good.
It's a very extensive program, and there's so many things that are good about it. I can't really. It's a little bit overwhelming at first because she joined late. So obviously, it's much better for your child, I think, to start on time. So everybody who's thinking of starting in September, I would. But I would say that throughout, just the fact that you're working with your child one-on-one through the live lessons, which are all available through the website, through each week, there's a live lesson. So you're actually learning with your child what they're learning. If you have to be able to dedicate the time to be able to understand what it is they're learning, so that should they need any immediate support from you, you're there to learn with them and to understand the areas in which they're struggling is a perfect example. If you have any problems, then after you know what they're learning or they're attempting to learn, then you have direct contact with the course via the telephone. You can speak to Mr. Taylor anytime. There are also two fantastic books which I would encourage people to read that Sir Tailor provides as part of the course. You have lots of learning materials, lots of publications which have exercises for your child to practice that run alongside the coursework that's provided and the live lessons. And I think really from a parent's point of view, it's very important that you do commit and immerse yourself fully and engage with the process with your child, and you will learn alongside them, and you'll understand what it is they need to know and what they don't need to know. And should you have any questions as a parent, there will always be Sir Tailor support actually of the week. So there isn't a time where there is no, and you have direct contact with the learning coach that each child is assigned according to which class they're put into or which day of the week they want to attend. And that learning coach is with them throughout the entire course, and you can direct your questions to them via email, and should you need to speak to them, although I haven't directly needed to contact via phone, you can actually normally jump in at the end of a live lesson should you have any direct queries to your learning coach on behalf of your child. But most of the time, your children are encouraged to ask the questions themselves, which of course is more important because it means that they're understanding if they have a problem, and it's normally a problem they will have already discussed with you. So you'll be aware of it. So if the child doesn't clarify it with their learning coach, then you have the ability to contact the Tailor or any of the team directly to ask a question. And I would say, you know, you can learn a lot from reading the books anyway, in terms of the way you think about helping your child through the course, and the way you behave with them whilst you're learning with your child through the course. So I don't think that at any time there has been a point, even though we got a lot of information to begin with, we have actually either via email, via phone call, via direct Zooming, we've always been able to answer the questions as we've gone along. And most of it actually you can work out yourself once you've understood the system and how it works. Yeah. So yes, I won't go on too much longer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davis, for the detailed input from me. I appreciate it very much. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple of things to you, sir, because it's that if you see these things, then you will get a better idea, because your question was about how do parents know how to support their child. And I understand that, because you're not the expert and I am. And I actually go to quite a lot of trouble to share that expertise with you, as I am doing today. I'm going to show you some things, sir. I know this is the home page. In there, the top right corner, little orange button says login. Every pupil and the parents of every pupil have a login that they can access the company's platform with. I'm going to just log in here as myself in order to show you what it is that you as a parent see, because this directly also addresses your question. Now, as I'm able to log in as any other person. So I'm going to log in as the parent of a child who is on the 11 plus program. He's actually one of my dummy pupils, so I'm not compromising anybody's Bosworth, right? Now I'm logging in as Bosworth's mum. And when Bosworth's mum logs in, this is what she sees. She sees a performance graph, which gives his performance from the beginning of the course back in September until the last set of scores that were put in, which were for session 15. And you can see that Bosworth is generally doing quite well, because his performance overall is mostly in the green. So he's doing pretty well. But there's much more to it than that. There's something called a pupil record sheet. Now, the pupil record sheet is where the tutor, the learning coach, in this case me, puts in scores for the child. We collect scores on various things. How many words did the child add into their vocabulary book? What score did they get in the test? I call it a feast. I won't go into it now. The feast that they did in the live lesson. What scores did they get in the homework that they did? And based upon those scores, they get an overall percentage for each week. And that's in the furthest column on the right, and that is what is plotted here. Now you can use this in order to see where this child might need help. So for example, if Bosworth was a real pupil and I was his parent, I'd say, oh, he took a big dip from between week 8 and week 9. So something in week 9 he struggled with. Let's see. So I go to week 9 and I see in the scores, which scores pulled him down. Well, it seems to me that it's that the feasts, perhaps this verbal timed practice from session 9, 14 out of 24, is a little bit better than 50%. And that's dragged down those scores, and it's dragged down his overall performance. So I think, okay, the verbal timed practice from session 9. And I mean, you as the parent would have access to that sheet. So you could look at the sheet and see what that was about, and then perhaps review it. But there may also be a comment from the learning coach or tutor in the feedback. So you can read the feedback relating to Bosworth for session 9, just to see in case the tutor mentions something about it. Yes, I can see the tutor said 14 out of 24 in a test on identifying nouns. So Bosworth seems to have struggled here with identifying nouns a little bit. I mean, the score wasn't awful, but it did pull down his average a little bit. So now it was to do with identifying nouns, but there's more to it. If now that we know that it was identifying nouns that he wasn't very good at, you can go to the video lessons. So you as dad or mum have access to all the teaching. Literally, you can see what am I teaching about nouns. So I've just put in noun in the search bar, and an awful lot of videos have actually come up, but there is actually a video entitled nouns. So you, via your own login, can access all the teaching, and you can say, what was it then? And you can play it for your child and say, all right, what is it Mr. Tailor is saying about nouns?
Noun as a person, place.
This is a 10.5 minute
like
video. I'm not going to
classify
play all of it.
nouns. Nouns can be singular or they can be plural. I'm sure you can think of your own examples, but just to illustrate, you can say person, which is singular, versus people, which is plural. So the distinction here is that a noun can be singular or it can be plural. So singular versus plural. So that's one way that nouns can be looked at. Another way that nouns can be looked at is whether there are proper nouns or what we call common nouns. So if you take a word, let's take the name of a person, for example. Let's say the name Derek. It's written with a capital D because it is a proper noun. It's the name of a particular person. Whereas man is not a particular person, it's what we call a common noun. So it's not.
So the point I'm making there is that if your child struggles with a particular topic, that's not the end of it, that's just the beginning. You say, oh, what's your learning need? And then you can address the learning need because you have access to all the teaching. And you as parent don't have to think, oh, but I wonder how Mr. Tailor explains this, or how can I explain it? You can look at my explanation literally, and you can see this is the way I'm explaining it. This is the topic that I'm teaching. And there's more to it too. If you're, excuse me, how do you support your child? Well, if you look, there's something called parents' answers. If you as dad not sure what to do, well, take a look. This is what we call parents' answers and checklist. After every lesson, or once a week, you get one of these. This is a parents' checklist and answers. It has some answers for some of the worksheets you need to mark, but more importantly for this question, you have a checklist, literally a parent's checklist of what work it is that your child needs to do before the next lesson. So it says clearly 11 plus parents checklist and answers to use after live lesson 16, and work to be completed before live lesson 17. And number one, every week, 11 plus course, foundation course, doesn't matter. Read for at least 30 minutes daily. This is more important than all the other work combined. That is not hyperbole, that's just a fact. And your child can literally tick off on, or not your child, but you or your child actually can tick off on the checklist what has been done, what remains to be done. So you can, what you really need to do is to help your child to manage their workload, to plan out their time, to plan out their tasks using this checklist. So this is a comprehensive checklist of what work your child needs to do between live lesson 16 and live lesson 17. And you can literally print it out, put it on your child's desk or on the fridge or somewhere convenient. And when they've done something, they can tick it off, or you can tick it off. Mental arithmetic practice, 5 minutes a day, tick it off each day they do it. Study the fact sheet till they know it inside out. Vocabulary words, at least 3 words a day, tick it when they've done it, and so on. And then brain exercises. These are some worksheets for which the answers are included on this document. They need to study video lessons. Or rather, sorry, this is not video lessons. This is the online homework, the stuff that's marked by the tutor. They need to do those study tests and they can tick it when they've done it, and so on. So literally, I am itemizing the things that your child needs to do before the next lesson. And what you do is you help your child to actually fit those into the week, to do them and to monitor them. And if anything is not done, it will show because there's no tick next to it. So there is that. I'm going to show you something else while we're in the login, because I think the question warrants more information, because it's here, it's right here. That not only do you have access to these parents' checklists and answers, which also, by the way, tell you exactly what your child needs to have to hand when they come to the next lesson, so they can use that when preparing for the next lesson. Whether it's classroom-based or in a room, it doesn't matter. They need the same stuff. There's something else. There's something called general videos, and this really directly answers your question, sir. You have access to a couple of dozen videos, and there are several videos here which are specifically for parents on the 11 plus, put with a child on the 11 plus course. Some are for the foundation and some are both. Here is a briefing for parents of children on the 11 plus course, which was a July briefing last summer when we were in lockdown, where I'm guiding the parents on what they should and shouldn't do and taking questions like I'm doing today. Then for the new course, which started in September, I gave an initial briefing for parents and children about the program, what is expected of parents and children, what they can do if ever they have a problem or an issue, how they can go forward with it. So I'm having Zoom webinars, a bit like today, with the parents and sometimes with parents and children, so that I can answer any questions or queries about what parents and children should be doing. And I record them, and they're here. You can review them at any time. So you can see there are several videos relating to 11 plus and a couple relating to foundation. So there is a lot of guidance in these videos. I call them general videos because they're not syllabus based. They're general guidance on the kinds of things that parents really need to know that you're going about things the right way. So there's video recordings, general videos. There are teaching videos, which are to do with the actual subject matter. There's literally checklists of exactly what work your child needs to do between this lesson and that lesson. And then if the feedback system that Ms. Davis mentioned, I showed you feedback for Bosworth from the tutor, but actually that system can be used both ways. This is just a dummy pupil, so there is no actual parent. But sometimes parents can, literally in the same way that the tutor is writing comments here, and sometimes, giving guidance to the parent of what they can do to help their child. If you have a query about anything, you literally just type it and submit it, and that goes directly to the tutor. So there is this feedback system, which is a two-way communication directly with the child's tutor or learning coach. And if the tutor is not able to help, next stop is me. You telephone the support team, somebody is there on the phone between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m., 7 days a week, and they will arrange a Zoom consultation with me if it's something the tutor is not able to help with. And so whatever is the issue, the concern, or the query, somebody is there that you can turn to. If it's just a administrative or routine matter, the person you speak to on the phone is likely to be able to help you. If it's anything to do with your child's work or syllabus-based question, the learning coach will be able to help you. If it's anything else, I can do my best to help you, and you have access to all of us. So I don't really see what more I could possibly do in order to guide and support parents about what exactly is required of them and how they can best help their child. And I actually have Zoom consultations with parents of children on the program quite regularly, quite frequently. And many times what we're talking about is their child is having difficulty with a particular thing. And very often it's comprehension. Sometimes it's to do with motivation, but sometimes it's to do with comprehension. Sometimes it's to do with nonverbal reasoning. Some children just, because it's not a school subject, and it's quite alien to some children, it takes a little bit of getting used to. And I just work with them individually to help them and to guide the parent as how they can help them. So there is written help, there's video recordings giving guidance, there are video lessons, there's a checklist of what work parents need to do, there's the tutor to turn to, there's the support team on the phone, and then ultimately, if nobody else is able to help you, then you come to me. So whatever the issue, the concern, the worry, then somebody is there that you can turn to. So
many thanks to the lady and yourself. Can I, if I may, just a final question here, just off the back of this, right?
Okay.
So I know it's not a perfect science, but what should I expect in terms of the minimum hours or number of hours that would be required to be committed to this? Because as you know, we are all working. Well, I'm a working parent, so it's really, really difficult, right? So, yeah.
What the commitment from the parent?
From the parent, yes.
Right. Yes. Okay. Got it. I'm just going to mute you because I think there's somebody making a little bit of gurgling noises. Just
yeah, sorry, the baby.
That's all right. Yeah. Thank you very much for that question, because normally I speak about the amount of commitment required of the child, and the bulk of the work is done by the child. So I'll mention that briefly, and then I'll come to the parent. The live lesson on the 11+ program is 3 hours. On the foundation, it's 2 hours. But the live lesson is roughly a quarter of the work that's required of the child. So on the 11+ program, I think outside of the live lesson, the amount of work they would do in a week typically would be something between 8 and 12 hours. And it varies a lot from week to week, depending on the subjects covered that week. But it also depends a lot on the child's working habits. Some children have efficient working habits where they'll sit down and blitz their work, and then they'll get their work done in the minimum number of hours. Other children will work for a few minutes and then have a break, and a few minutes and do something else. And they'll drag out a piece of work that should have taken half an hour, and they'll make it take 2 hours. Of course, they're going to take forever. They're going to fill up their entire week with the work, which is not what the intention is. The volume of work that I set the children is sufficient for them to gain the knowledge and skills that they require, but it is not so much that they're not able to lead a balanced life. So that's the children's commitment. Parents' commitment, well, it depends how you look at it, but the minimum commitment on the parent is about an hour. And the minimum commitment of the parent is to print out the checklist that I showed you and to mark the worksheets for which the answers are provided on the checklist, and to mark work that your child does from books, because I issue numerous books on the 11+ program. Here's just a small handful of them. And I set work each week from some of the books. So it's a little bit from each book, but very varied, great wide exposure to things. And the answers for the work from the books are mostly in the books themselves. So you would mark that. So you're literally taking provided answers and you're marking the work done from them. So in total, the marking time and printing off the checklist, that's the bare minimum. And I reckon that that's about an hour's worth of work. That's the minimum. Now, I think that children would benefit if the parent is doing something more than printing out the checklist and marking their worksheets and work from the books or publications or pubs, as I like to call them. So, beyond that 1 hour, there's no end to how much you could do. I mean, it depends entirely on your circumstances and how comfortable you feel doing it. But beyond marking their work and providing them with a checklist, you can, many parents I know do, and as Ms. Davis mentioned, study the videos, the teaching themselves, so that they are fully conversant with what it is that I'm teaching and how I'm teaching it, so that if the child struggles at all, the parent is able to help them. What happens, and with the traditional teaching model, is that the children go to tuition and it's there that the teaching is done, and your child comes home and then your child has no more access to that lesson or that teaching, and you as parent actually have zero access to the lesson and the teaching. And that's a great failing. And we can certainly do better than that now. And that's what I'm doing. So in fact, your child has repeated access to the learning because it's there in their login. And so do you, mom and dad, have access to all the learning. So it's much better than the traditional model for learning purposes because the teaching isn't primarily done in the live lesson. Because if it was, then you, mom and dad, wouldn't have access to it. No, the live lesson is more for anything that's interactive that requires a two-way conversation. And so that's what we prioritize in the live lesson. So that, I think, should give you an idea that minimum commitment on the parent is an hour. And then beyond that, I think if you're able to, that's, by the way, I should emphasize, I mean, I hope it is understood from my presentation that the most important input of parents isn't the technical stuff. You know, I'm doing the technical stuff and the marking is really nominal. I mean, it's not that it's insignificant. It's not that it's unimportant, but it's just a technical thing. You know, here's the answer. Is it what they put or not? Tick, cross. No, the more important input of parents is the things that I have talked about in today's presentation. And the number one most important thing in supporting your child is the mind management. So Miss Davis mentioned that she would recommend reading these two books. And I strong advocate of them to the point where I'm literally supplying them to the parent of every pupil on the 11 Plus course. The most important thing that parents can do is to teach their child good mind management skills. And then after that, the next most important thing for your child's learning is to nurture the growth mindset in them. Those two things are not things you sit down and do and set aside a 10-minute or half an hour here and there. Those are just about how you live your life. And those are the most important input of parents. And if the children have a good mind management skills and they have exercising a growth mindset as much as possible, the other things kind of fall into place. They're just technical things. So the greatest input of parents is on, and the healthy perspective I mentioned. So, you know, mind management, mindset, perspective, that is what is most required of parents. And that makes the biggest difference to your child's flourishing. And in essence, the technical stuff, you know, my slide where I showed you the structure of that pretty much sums it up. The technical stuff is much, much less important than those things. I hope that helps. So I'm going to re-enable you to speak because I think I muted you just to cut out the noise.
No, it's fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now, please.
Yeah, it did help. Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your questions. Okay, I have a hand up from Mrs. Arab. Hello again. Please unmute yourself and you can go ahead.
Hello, Taylor. Thank you very much for your wonderful course. Obviously, presentation was
Thank
so
you for saying
helpful.
so.
Having had an older one go through the process, she's in year 8 now. I am a firm believer of how you unlock the children's minds and give them such a good foundation and knowledge to their later years. What I did want to explain is my eldest did go through the mock test beforehand. So obviously with this whole pandemic in the current situation, are you likely to have any mock tests?
Okay, you were a bit muffled, so I'm going to repeat the question, which I think I just about got. A couple of years ago, I did a mock test. It was in February, March time. And Mrs. Arab's older daughter was on the 11 Plus program at that time. Her younger daughter is on the 11 Plus program now. And Mrs. Arab is asking whether I'm likely to run a mock test this term. And the answer is no, I'm not. At that time, I think it's 2, maybe 3 years ago now, what I was doing is I was running some public mocks there are many public 11+ mock tests available there, and I kind of tried it out. In the end, I decided against that. The reason I decided against it was primarily because it was too early in the program to be doing a mock test. We haven't finished covering the syllabus yet. We don't do that till May. There are 5 mock tests which are part of the program, but they're the last part of the program. And I think that's the best place to be doing mock tests. And sometimes a mock test, especially a premature one, tends to stoke up a bit more of the hype. And I'm trying to keep a lid on that. I think that it can benefit children by giving them a little bit of a, a kick to wake up and say, oh, I'm not doing that great as I thought I was. It can work like that. But I think we're already doing enough of getting children to perform and reflecting on their performance and what they have and have not done well, identifying learning needs. I think we're already doing a lot of that. So no, I'm not planning to do any mock tests this term, but there are 5 mock tests in the last 5 sessions of the program. Are you disappointed, Ms. Sarab?
Well, yes, I found it very beneficial for my older daughter in terms of trying to establish all the areas where she was underperforming. So my youngest one, who's on the 11+ at the moment, she obviously has a few areas which she needs to review, but I found that it might be better for her to complete the course, do the mock test, and then revise on the areas where she's not too proficient, because at the moment she's just about being able to keep abreast of stuff in terms of the amount she can take in every week. I do worry that without having the additional mock tests, it will not give us a lot of support in terms of being able to identify the areas which she needs improving.
Yes, the learning needs. Can I address that some more? Because I think it's a really important point. Okay. The emphasis on the program from the beginning, the very beginning, is that children are to correct any errors that they make, whether it's from worksheets or from the publications, the books, or whether it's the online homework that the children do, which is marked by the tutor. Children, whatever mistakes they make, things they don't know, questions they could not answer, for them, once the work's been marked, to then revisit those in order to identify their learning need. Maybe some knowledge, maybe some skill, maybe some imagination, and therefore learn from that. Now, the children are doing a great variety of work through the program. It's quite varied. There's traditional pencil and paper work, literally on worksheets. There's work from books. There's studying of video lessons. There's doing work online using an online annotation tool. So that's a great variety of ways of working. They also do mental arithmetic practice using an online game for it. And what happens is that for every unit that we teach in the program, there's some teaching via video, there's a worksheet that the children complete, there are notes to complete, and there's online homework to complete. So there are numerous opportunities for children to identify something they have not understood or that something they have misunderstood, and then to address those at the time. This is actually more comprehensive than any mock test can be, because what a mock test does is what any single paper can do, which is to select this topic and that topic and a few questions of that and a few questions of that. So it would be a small percentage of the syllabus. And so what it's doing is taking a little bit of a mix of bits of the syllabus and saying to the children, all right, here we go, do this. Then there it is, that's a mock paper, that's what it is. That's all it is, it's nothing more than that. And we're already doing that but we're doing it more comprehensively, more thoroughly, because of the variety of work that the children do on every unit. So as we go through the program, unit by unit, children are already having a go at using the concepts, the knowledge that they're gaining, and identifying whether they've understood it well or they need to review it. And that's the comprehensive way to do it. I think that the phase 2 of the program, which I call XTP, Exam Techniques and Practice, is a chance for them to actually review the bulk of the course, and that's another opportunity for them to identify learning needs. This is phase 2 of the program, which is May, June, around that time. And that sort of later on in the summer term and thereafter, children are doing a lot of practice papers, and a practice paper is a mock test. If you administer it under test conditions, then it's a mock test. So the children are having ample opportunity then to identify things where they are still slipping up and then review them, because they still have access to all the teaching, they have their notes, they have their classwork. So there are a lot of opportunities to review their learning as they identify learning needs. Now, I think that if you take a typical mock test paper and administer it before the children have completed the syllabus, then they will be being put into a test situation, which is not quite fair to them, because a typical mock test can choose topics from any part of the syllabus, and it may be a part of the syllabus they haven't had an opportunity yet to study. So that wouldn't be a fair test of them. And I'm not really appreciating why putting various bits of the syllabus into a paper and saying, now do this, is any more informative than actually saying, right, we've just taught you ratio and proportion. Here's a class worksheet for you to complete on ratio and proportion to implement what you have just learned. And then some weeks later saying, now here's a homework sheet for you to complete on ratio and proportion, which the tutor is going to mark. And because both of them are, what they're doing is practicing that specific thing and applying the concept in order to see, have you actually understood the concept and are you able to apply it? And then later on in the program, they'll come across a question where they're able to implement this concept of ratio and proportion in order to solve the question. And then if they're still rusty with it, they can say, oh, right, yes, I forgot how to lay out a ratio. And they can just look at their notes, examples, the video lesson, and say, right, I remember now. So it's being reinforced all the way through. In fact, the program builds in a lot of healthy reinforcement. Children study the video lesson, they kind of get asked questions, and they can get to ask questions during the live lesson subsequently. They can review the video subsequently if there was something that they weren't confident with. They will attempt classwork on it. Some weeks later, they will attempt some homework on it. And throughout the course, the children are doing questions from books, publications, which expose them to a good variety of things where they're using knowledge that they have gained on the program. And therefore, they're actually implementing things that they've learned and bringing them together to solve problems. And the course itself, phase 1, we're teaching the syllabus of the course unit by unit. So in a typical week on the 11+ program, they might do a unit of literacy, something to do with English or verbal reasoning, or sometimes both, a unit of perhaps mathematics, and perhaps a unit of non-verbal reasoning. And week by week, we work our way through the syllabus right up till sometime in May. And then in June, we focus on applying their knowledge and skills in the exam situation, exam techniques and practice, and at the same time, review the syllabus. So they're revisiting the topics, the units, the syllabus at that point, and therefore reinforcing it. And then they're bringing it all together in the test situation in phase 3 of the program, which is the last 5 sessions, which are all based around a mock test. So they are then, and that's just in live lessons. the bulk of the work, remember about 3/4 at least, is being done at home. We issue quite a lot of papers which are well suited to being used as mock tests at home. So that, and I'm just going to show you that I have a box next to me of mock tests. These papers, they're all issued as part of the program. And right here in my hand, I have 20 papers, 20 11+ type papers, each one of which can be used as a mock test paper under test conditions at home. So, you know, you can really fill your boots and your child can do as many mock tests as they want, go through them really thoroughly, identifying and then addressing their learning needs. And so there's no end to the opportunity for children to do that at that stage with mock test papers. But through the program, they should be doing it via the classwork and videos and the STs for the syllabus work. Miss Sarah, I'm just going to allow you to speak to see if that helped or if there's more you'd like to add.
Yes, it does help, Mr. Taylor. Thank you very much. But I was also leaning to more of the extra mock ones, which I booked for my older daughter.
I didn't quite catch all of that. Your sound is a bit muffled and I'm not able to make out everything you're saying. Would you mind repeating that?
Thank you for your information. Yes, it is helpful, but I was veering towards more of the extra mock tests you carried out a couple of years ago with my oldest, if they would still be going ahead due to the current climate.
No, that was a one-off. That I'd never done that before, and I haven't done it since, and I don't intend to do it. But if you think it would help your daughter, I would say just get any paper, any practice paper you like, and sit her down at home, create exam conditions, and say, right, have a go at this. You've got 5 minutes on this section, and then, you know, work her way through the paper in that way, and then in the same way that she can, well, it's not quite the same way. I mean, the only difference between a mock and a practice is that the mock is done under exam conditions, and there's nothing to stop you recreating exam conditions at home. Just sit her down and do it in accordance with the guidance on the paper itself. So if you want to do a mock with your daughter, you can absolutely do that. Simply give her a practice paper to do and say, right, we're going to do this under exam conditions to see what you can do, and then go through it with a fine-tooth comb afterwards, and you will identify the learning needs. So the pandemic has nothing to do with this policy. That year was a one-off year, and I decided, no, on balance, this is not a good thing for me to be doing at that stage. But you know, you can do as many mock tests as you think are helpful at home. Just get a set of practice papers and administer them under test conditions, because that's all that a mock is.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
All right. Now, I'm just, in case any hands were up accidentally, I'm just lowered all hands. If anybody does have a question, please raise your hand. I think I'm just checking the time. It is gone 1, but I'm happy to take another 1 or 2 questions if you have them. Okay, at the moment, I'm not seeing any hands, so I will end it for today. But I will remind you that I'm very happy to talk to any parent, whether they have a child on my program or not, and share whatever guidance I am able to share. It doesn't cost you anything. There isn't a charge for a consultation with me. It is literally free. Telephone my support team any day of the week. Somebody is there 7 days a week from 10 a.m. till 3 p.m. You'll find the phone number on the homepage of the website. And remember that we are planning to open bookings for the next set of courses from late April to early May. The courses themselves start in September and mid and late September for 11+ and foundation respectively. And I think if you do have a child who's now in year 4, I would recommend that they join the foundation course doesn't matter that the foundation course is halfway through, because they can benefit from the second half of the program without having done the first half of the program. And I will repeat my presentation next month. If you can think of anybody who might benefit from the information and insights that I share, please recommend them to come. Normally they can go to the homepage of the website and register for it by clicking on the link. Thank you very much for attending today. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday and stay well. Bye-bye.